Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Timesphere podcast. This week we are joined graciously by Xavier, who does not usually pop on to the pre-recorded stuff unless we ask him to. So thank you for popping in, Xavier. Glad to have you on something that isn't live content.
This is evidence that they asked me to be here. Now I'm here.
It's not like you don't have an open invitation if we don't have a guest or something. Even if we have a guest, you can like if you want to be on to talk about something, you can just be like, "Yo, I want to be on."
Well,
Nah,
before we
ruins, like,
started
mystery, you know.
before we started recording, he did brandish a weapon and was saying, "Put me on the podcast."
Oh yeah, no, he just popped into the call.
You just don't see it. Yeah.
That would be a very funny way to like operate a podcast. Is like you have the open server, you have the call, and then the person who gets to be the third chair has to win a fight of some kind to be on the podcast that week. Like maybe we run a little tournament
the battle
of
royale.
Battle Royale. Like you have to win in like a custom lobby of Fortnite, or you have to win a fight, win a best of 3 fighting game or something. It's a random game every week. That'd be pretty funny.
I thought you meant like a physical altercation. I was like, I would be on the podcast every week.
Okay,
that'll be our anniversary episode.
That is true.
Like,
I would not put a lot of people that we would have in like our guest pool up against you in like a physical fight and give them a chance to win. Yeah, you're right. But like, because that would keep us from like, oh yeah, we should have another host or whatever. That'd stop us. That'd be the best way to stop us from becoming one of those 9 people podcasts that are all just people that have terrible opinions. Like, we only need so many terrible opinions on this podcast. Yeah. Scott and I have the majority of it covered. Usually the third chair gets to be the good opinion. Like last week, if you haven't watched last week's episode, you should. We had our friend Issy on to talk about video game reviews and like the back end of coverage and stuff. Very, very fun, very good, very long episode. So if you need something for background noise, that one went a little longer than we were expecting, but it's a lot of really good conversations. So highly recommend it. But Issy was definitely like the seasoned voice to our well, not necessarily rambling, because we didn't ramble too much. We were pretty concise with topics, but he was definitely the seasoned opinion that garners respect versus Scott and I just talking.
Which is funny because during that he brought up how even though he had been doing this not too long, that a lot of people still come to him for advice, like he's a veteran figure.
Well, he's also been like an editor at multiple places. Right. He's been like a lot of stuff. Like the two of us, sure, we've done like editing and feedback and like run beats, but we never had like an editor role, or at least not one that was like that was our entire gig. Like we weren't making like we made content plans. We've made like we've pitched beats and run events and stuff, but we haven't done like the full on 9 to 5 like, oh, you're on a shift editing like for the entire time. You have to have meetings for specifically for that. You have to hire on people. You have to do this and that. So he's more experienced than us in that matter. Sure, we both might have more general experience with him over him in like in the field in general, but in the areas that last week's topics covered, I think he gave a different perspective than we could, because he was also on the editing side of things. So,
but enough about last week's episode. Let's get into this episode.
Yeah, let's talk about this week's
episode. In the spirit of Issy, let's edit out our rambling and let's get right to the meat.
Yeah, we don't live in the past. We just push onward.
That funny you should say that, Xavier, because the last chapter I finished in Sparking Zero was I was about to reach one of the character episodes. I was about to reach the Goku Black. For one of them, so fighting for the future, moving past inhibitions and all that stuff. Yeah, on brand. But yeah, we're gonna talk about Sparking Zero. Obviously, by the time you're listening to this, embargo will be up for review, and early access will either be out, up, and obviously people are gonna be able to stream it and everything. So. You'll be seeing content. You'll be getting all the information you want. You'll be getting detailed looks at like the shop and all the character rosters and all the customization and everything from the people who are doing full-on reviews and are going to be publishing videos and stuff like right at that embargo. So with that in mind, I am going to give my short review let me pull up my notes real quick because I want to pull up like a specific point, but the basic idea the basic idea is this game is very very good. It's almost to a fault the same like it, Xavier, we talked about this a little bit in our preview, like how the game feels like they took BT3, so Budokai Tenkaichi 3, the last game, and moved it into the future. Like they took everything about that game and pushed it into a new engine, upped the visual fidelity, did all these very specific things to make the game feel, what's the word? Feel very. I mean, I guess feel familiar, but also feel updated. So
Yeah, you want it to feel like modern. You don't want it to, feel dated.
Yeah, there's a lot to really like about the stuff that they modernized. I do want to specifically say that, but boilerplate like rundown of what my thoughts on the game. Visuals are incredible. The modernization for the most part is really good. The amount of content in this game is, even for people who looked at the game and are like, wow, that's a lot of content, it's going to surprise you. Because it surprised me how deep a lot of the stuff goes. The character episodes, or episode battle, very in-depth, very fun way to experience the Dragon Ball Z 2 Super story. Obviously, there's not a lot of Dragon Ball representation. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But very fun way to experience that story. And for Super, it's one of the first times we've gotten to experience that story in a video game setting. So it's a lot. There's a lot that this kind of the tired formula of the Dragon Ball games might not have touched on, in terms of, oh yeah, we can rehash this and go in and you can play as Goku or whatever. Like you've done that time and time again across dozens, if not, I think probably 30 plus games at this point. Just do that basically without like really adding anything. But this does add a lot through the what if scenarios, which are called sparking episodes. I believe all of them are called. But yeah, so overall, like, presentation's great. Modernization feels good. There is some stuff I don't like about the controls. It feels like a lot of options are limited. It does have a pretty nice set of tutorials. So you got like training and then super training, which are two different kinds of tutorials that'll teach you how to play the game and teach you the nuances of how to do certain moves and interactions and how to get out of them or do them. But my main complaint is the menus that they've added for all the moves. I think that a lot of times you're going to end up trying to do a super move by hitting L2, because I was playing on PlayStation, so hitting L2 and then having to input the face button that you want to do, or the arrow key, or I said arrow key, like the diagonal button that you want to like input the move, like the special command for. So you're gonna end up.
You're supposed to play fighting games on keyboard, right? That's what I was told.
Yeah, this is less of a fighting game and more of an arena fighter.
I'm a big WASD guy when it comes to
yeah.
fighting games.
So this is less of a fighting. I mean, all the interactions and stuff, like, there are fighting game style mechanics, but for the most part, you're opening a menu to use your moves. You're not inputting commands. Like, you're not doing like quarter circles, or you're not doing like follow ups. So everything is like all your super moves, like the Kamehameha, or like your rush attack, like you're rushing them down, and then you do a cutscene move where you're doing like a combo or something. All of those are just mapped to a button. So you L2 and then do the button if you have enough ki to then do that move and perform it the way the different characters use it. They have different abilities that you can use once you have a different meter filled up, that gives you like the ability to automatically charge to full power, or put up a barrier, or do like an explosive wave or a solar flare or something to change how you interact with the opponent. So there is the depth of a fighting game, but the way you play it isn't like a traditional fighting game. It's
it sounds more turn-based, like a turn-based RPG.
Almost, yeah. It, especially with how they present it in Sparking Zero compared to, because I went back and even during my review, I was like, this isn't how they did it in BT3 or even BT2, where you have a menu that you have to do. No, in the older games, you just hit L2 and then whatever face button the move is, and then that does the move for you automatically. You don't have to go into a menu. Now you actually have to go into a menu, which in my opinion makes things a little clunkier and makes you more likely. Like, there were multiple times trying to do a combo or trying to do an interaction where I was like, oh, bang, 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 I'm going behind them to beat them up, and then I'm going to launch them, and then as soon as I launch them, I'm going to hit the rush attack and do it as a follow-up because they can't dodge. and then I'd find myself L2 triangle to do it, and I am inputting it wrong, or I'm letting go of L2 too early to let the input actually go through. It's just something you're gonna have to adapt to. It doesn't feel bad, but it is an adjustment period that you're gonna have with the game. That's like one of my main complaints with it. But overall, visually incredible. There's a lot of content. You're going to be playing this game for a long time if you go through and do everything, especially in the character episodes. Customization's great. You will need to grind for Zinni if you want all the customization options. A lot of the stuff is in the shop, which is fine. You're going to get a ton of Zinni. Like, I haven't even finished all the character episodes, and I've only beaten a few world tournaments, and I've done some custom battles and stuff, and I've already unlocked all the characters in the shop that were available at the time of me finishing up to do this podcast. So that's great. Obviously, the controls are great when they're at their best, and sometimes they're a little clunky, but that's just kind of how 3D arena fighters work sometimes. There's just a lot to love about this game. I'd probably just, if on a 1 to 10 normal video game review scale, if I had to give it a grade, it'd be an 8, because it does everything I wanted from a sequel to Budokai Tenkaichi 3. It does everything I wanted out of it, give or take a few things here or there that they did better or did worse. But with the amount of content, the characters, how incredible it is to look, and how the interactions and the voice acting, all of the sound effects, all of the just everything in that mold, and how they brought it to life in the modern generation of consoles, I love it. It just doesn't transcend what I wanted, like what I think this game could have been if they did more. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to see going through this game. Maybe not if you're just like, oh, I just want to do this, I just want to do that, I just want to play the online, or I just want to do the custom battles or whatever. You'll probably have your own gripes for it, but for me, I think it stopped just short of being like the ultimate version of what this game could be. And we'll get into that a little bit, specifically with the character episodes, which is where I spent most of my time for this review period. It just felt like it falls a little bit short of being absolutely amazing, but it is a fantastic game. And if you like BT3 and are hoping for Budokai Tenkaichi to have come back, like in its old, like if you were hoping for this to be a true sequel to Budokai Tenkaichi, I think you are going to like this game, and it's going to be worth your money. If you're looking for something more than that, you might struggle. I can see a lot of obviously reviews aren't out yet, but I can see a lot of places giving this a 5, a 6, or a 7, depending on how much they were wanting that BT experience. For me, this is a perfect Budokai Tenkaichi game for what it could have, for what I was hoping for and what I could expect. But seeing what it could have been, I have to knock it down a little bit. Like, with my experience and with what I see the potential for what could have been, I think that it's an 8 out of 10, just a really, really, really great game. But it's not going to be on any game of the year list or anything. It's not going to do that for a lot of people. So I know Scott, you don't have a lot of questions, but Xavier, do you want to go into a specific mode, or do you want to go into a specific thing first? Or like what do you want to talk about a little bit more in depth?
What about I mean, I guess like the story mode. Like you mentioned, like it fell short a little bit. Why do you fall short?
The reason it falls short for me is because at its best, it is exactly what everybody would ever want from a what if scenario Dragon Ball game. It is like, because everybody was worried about like how many options there would be to change the direction of how the game, like, because obviously like in the gameplay that I showed the last time we were able to talk about this and stuff that's been online for a while, you can choose, do you go with Piccolo or do you go with Krillin or do you go alone to fight Raditz? And that drastically changes.
The answer's Piccolo.
Well, the answer should be Piccolo because that's canon, and also Piccolo is the best. But
correct.
And
I've seen no Dragon Ball, and I know that.
Yeah, well, Piccolo is just the best. Yeah, but the way that changes, that is like the only way. There's a couple others that are like portrayed like that, but most of them are just like you win a battle a specific way or within a specific amount of time, then it branches. There's not like a lot of just choices you make like that, but the amount of those and the depth that some of those go to is wild. I was not expecting some of the depth. So, for reference, at the time of beating this, I've played through the majority of, or I've played through at least some of all of the story modes, because I think I've unlocked all of them. Because I might not have, no, because I haven't unlocked Jiren's yet. Because I believe Jiren is a playable story mode. I haven't unlocked his yet because he's like the one that you get much later on as you can like complete a bunch more stuff. But so going through most of Goku's, a lot of Vegeta's, all of Frieza's, all of Gohan's, some of Goku Black, some of Piccolo's, like all of them, the quality, the depth, and the variety of what the what if scenarios bring is so all over the place that it feels like a missed opportunity. They could have done so just for example, for Goku, there are 3 different what if scenarios that you can just get by playing through the Saiyan saga. Like there are 3 and 2 of them are very in depth. Like so if you choose to go alone and then beat Raditz, Goku ends up living, and this is one that's been shown, so it's not spoiling anything. And there's that entire story goes through the end of like the Frieza saga, and you get to do an entire what if there. There's one that if you go with Piccolo, but you beat Raditz without having to die as Goku, you then have another scenario that goes on through the end of the Saiyan saga and into the Frieza saga. Then there's the one that's like canon story, and then there's a couple other ways you can do this or that throughout beating Vegeta and then into Frieza, into Cell that I'm not going to spoil. So Goku's has a lot of branching timelines and a lot of depth to it. Obviously, it's the main story that goes all the way through the end of Super because Goku's the main character. So that one has a lot of depth to it. Frieza's is, in my opinion, out of the ones I played, the weakest in terms of how deep some of those goes. Like some of the what ifs that you do only give you like a couple extra fights and then like a very, and I'll talk about this here in a second too, a very like, okay, here's like 3 splash screens of using in-game things describing what happens, and then it ends and you have to go back and you have to go find another path or do the main story the regular way or whatever. So it varies greatly. Some of them are wild. There's one that even changes the main villain of an arc, like through one of them. That absolutely shocked me that they went that far. So you're gonna get a lot of like different. You're gonna get a lot out of all of them, and a lot of them are still super cool even if they're really short. But the fact that they went so hard on some of them and didn't like, they went for the multitude instead of like super high quality, in my opinion. Like they could have gone, oh, every character gets like 3 branching points from like this point gets one, this point gets one, this point gets one, and gone like really ham on them and made them super cool with unique assets and stuff. Because some of them do have unique assets or unique moves and unique visuals and stuff. They go really hard and are awesome. And then, like I said, some of them are just a little bit short and a little bit disappointing with how they end. So you're never going to be like super disappointed in them, but some of them are going to blow you out of the water. So I really wish that they would have focused down on making it a really impressive experience for when you do branch the path, instead of just going for kind of like the scattershot approach of, oh yeah, you can do this, and then there's like 2 extra fights, and then the story ends, and then you have to go back. The big issue that I have with that mode, outside of the quality difference in some of those, is how you get them. So if you do the branch and you go through and you do the branching path or whatever, then you have to go back and do the fight that has the branching path again.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to basically just play the match worse. So like a lot of them are like, okay, cool, beat like Raditz within a certain amount of time before he uses a certain move, or before someone transforms or something very simple like that. Once you do that, you get the branch, but then you have to go back and basically play it worse if you want to get the main storyline. Like you have to just stall for time, or you have to like not kill the person within a certain amount of time, which in a lot of cases isn't that hard to do, because like it isn't that hard to do the regular one, because a lot of these fights can be really challenging even at like the normal difficulty or whatever. But you do end up being getting really tired of having to go back and do these fights worse. Because like I just did one where I was fighting Cell as like Super Vegeta not too long ago. And it's like, oh, I beat Perfect Form Cell as Super Vegeta. You get like the cool like spin-off stuff, and then you go do that, and you go back, and I have to just stall until Cell lets me use Final Flash, and I have to kill him with a Final Flash or whatever to end the cutscene, or to get the special main story cutscene, and then go through with the story through the Boo Saga and everything. So it just gets really old having to do that over and over again. The cutscenes also vary heavily in quality. I don't think they're bad because all of them are in-game engine. They don't like cut from in-game engine to full-on like cutscene, like animated cutscene or anything, which is expected because there are so many characters and so many storylines in this game. But again, the quality varies so heavily between these. Like in the main story cutscenes for stuff, you can switch between a third person's perspective and the perspective of the character you're playing a lot of the time. So like you can be through Goku's eyes when he gets hit with the special beam cannon, and then the entire next part of the cutscene, you're like laying on the ground, looking up at the sky, kind of lolling your head back and forth. It's hard to hear because you're basically on death's door. Like there's a lot of cool stuff like that. But then you get the other stuff that's like, okay, it's a 3 splash screens with like some text over it, maybe a little line of dialogue here that's voice acted, and then it cuts to another one that is like fully voice acted but still splash screens or whatever. There's no consistency. I mean, by the time you get through like half of one character episode battle, like scenario or whatever, you find out the consistencies. There is none. Like sometimes you'll get this kind of cutscene, sometimes you get this kind of cutscene, sometimes you'll get like it goes all over the place between like 3 different kinds. None of them are bad, but it just doesn't feel like they put enough effort into a direction. I guess it feels like custom battles. Custom battles are like splash screens with like different animations you can use for different characters and like set scenarios or different backgrounds and poses and stuff. It feels like they went so heavy in basic. The way custom battles are going to work, and you'll see once you get into that, is basically how the story goes. Outside of like a couple like actually animated cutscenes. So you can't really knock them that much for it because obviously that is the system that they implemented to do these cutscenes, and then they also gave you the ability to make your own. So they had to make it somewhat basic or somewhat streamlined, but it just doesn't feel like they went all out with it. So that's where most of my knocks come from, other than like I talked a little bit about my issues with some of the controls and some of the clunkiness and some of the like main menu voice acting is like, if you just sit on the main menu for a while, you're gonna get real tired of hearing the same 3 voice lines.
Yeah.
Like I'm never sitting on the place where you go claim rewards for doing certain quests and stuff or missions or whatever, because I'm never going to want to hear Zeno say, "Goku, do you want to play with us?"
It's like the drum lines in the recruiting menu for college football.
Absolutely.
You start hearing the same lines over and over.
The exact.
It's like I'm sitting there. I just lost my 5-star to Tennessee, and some drum major's going.
Yep. It's exactly that. It's
2 in the morning.
It's just the same thing over and over again, which this game is going to suffer from a little bit, especially depending on how deep you go. I will say, and I'll get into some specifics here that I took some note of, where it's like, I think that the episode battle is a great way to experience the story, especially going through Super. Some of it being changed to is awesome, especially if you watch Super, watch all of Dragon Ball Z. It's awesome. They went to a pretty great length to do a lot of what if scenarios. A lot of them are really cool, even if some of them are better than others and some of them are more fleshed out than others. They're still really cool to see that you have that option. Goku's obviously is the longest and everything. It's got multiple paths alone. They will let you play through like the Saiyan Saga, Cell Saga, Frieza Saga, all that kind of stuff. I found it really weird because when I jumped into Vegeta's, which is the most recent one I played, his story doesn't even start until the Frieza Saga. So you don't get any opportunity to do like a what if in the, like if you beat Goku or whatever in the Saiyan Saga. It just jumps straight to Frieza, straight to when he's fighting Kui, I believe is the first fight you get there. So like that was a little weird, but like, yeah, whatever. The starting point's different for all of them. Creativity and depth for all of them, like the sparking episodes and all that stuff, especially within like the cutscenes and the variety of those, vary greatly. The big ones that change a lot are pretty scarce, but like once you get them, they're awesome. The challenge jumps significantly between different boss fights. Like there's a boss fight, the mainline boss fight, where you have to fight Great Ape Vegeta as Goku, is way harder than like 90% of the fights I had to face throughout the rest of it, just because of how you have to fight a giant is way harder than having to fight like even like some very late bosses. The time limits for some of the different splits are very hard. Like they're gonna make you learn how to play the game, which is like a good thing. Like it's gonna make you go into training or go into like certain modes to practice a little more, just to get good enough to do some of them because the time limits are very strenuous on some of them, and with how you have to approach them in the different characters. Further you get in each character story beyond Goku, obviously, because it has some big splits early on. You're going to get more creative with some of the scenarios that you get, especially once you get into Super. Feels like they focused a lot on Super for some of these characters just because they felt like there was the most ground to cover in terms of a what if scenario, which is cool. The way you backtrack on the map is a little slow. There's a warp option, but it's not great. The way you skip cutscenes is a little wonky depending on what the cutscenes are. I ran into a couple glitches with it's skipping a cutscene and then it's a black screen for like 5 to 10 seconds before the match starts. So just like a little couple visual bugs there. And then like I said, the ability to jump into first person for a lot of the cutscenes is really cool. Like I was not expecting that. Super dope to be able to change your perspective on how you see things or how you even visualize, like, because it's full on like tracked to their eyes. So like if they're looking at the ground, you're looking at the ground. It's super cool.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, that's all I got on the story mode. Unless you have any other specific questions, Xavier.
No, it sounds fun. Like even I mean anything's gonna have issues, but it does sound fun, and it does seem kind of like I want to like BT3. I felt was also like an inconsistent story mode because like some sagas were like really. I thought like the Cell saga was really good, but then like the Boo saga is just kind of like hot ass. Like it skips so much stuff in the Boo saga that I think is like interesting.
You're gonna
and so
feel
I'd
the
imagine
same way.
it's the same for this. Like certain sagas, gonna be cool, and then other ones it's like, I wish that fight was.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot out of some, and the good thing is I do think that the variety of characters that they chose for the character episodes will give you different depth in each arc. So like you're gonna get to experience arcs different ways from different perspectives. Obviously, the different branching paths. You're gonna get to play them differently. You're gonna get different fights. You're gonna get more out of some than others. Like you're gonna get more out of the Cell Saga when you're playing as Gohan versus playing as Piccolo. So there's a lot there to what you said. But yeah, it is BT3 related. Yeah.
I wanted to ask who your favorite character was. One from a sort of moves gameplay standpoint, and the other like based on whose story you like the most.
Ooh, story. I haven't finished all. Obviously, I think Goku's going to be just the most basic. I haven't gotten to like. I'm really interested to get. I'm going to try and do that before I write my. But by the time you're reading this, listeners and video watchers, I will have my written review up too. That's going to go a little bit more in depth on like mechanics and stuff. So you're going to go read that. I will have gone a little bit further into some of these stories, to when I'm finished writing that. So go read that. But I want to see where Goku's super what ifs go. But so far through what I've played of like finishing like 3 or 4 different ones, I think Gohan's might be my favorite, just because a lot of people know how a lot of people have the view that Gohan's potential was wasted after the Cell Saga and how he approaches certain things, not only in the what ifs but just like in the character episodes in general, are like give a little bit more depth to his character. I really wish that the base game had gone all the way through Superhero and given you like Gohan Beast and like some of the other stuff to like really be able to touch on more. And I doubt it. I doubt we're getting story DLC with the character DLC that we'll get when they add superhero content. But yeah, I think Gohan's like the ending of Gohan's is by far my favorite so far, just because of I think it's the wildest what if scenario that you can get. That I've gotten to so far through like almost 24 hours, 30 hours of playing the game. So there's a lot of content in this game. You're going to be playing, especially if you're just like going through and doing fights. Like I played a lot of tournament mode before I even dove into like the character episode. So, and it was like unlocking characters and trying out moves and stuff. So, Gohan's is definitely my favorite story, and there's a lot of depth you can go to for a lot of them. So a lot of people are going to have differing favorites there. In terms of gameplay, man, I don't like some of the changes they made to some of the moves from BT3, like some of the slashing moves. It feels like any barrage type move is about as effective as it is in the show, where like you're not getting a lot. It's easy to dodge. You can
teleport the tracking is weird. Like
tracking's weird. You can teleport out of mid hit. You can just teleport out of it a lot of the time, or you can end up blocking hits after you take hits. So it feels very inconsistent with a lot of that kind of stuff. I really like how I'm a big fan of the movies. I like how Tapion plays in this. I think he's got one of the better slashing moves. I think he still has his hero shield, which basically can block any move coming at him if you use it. But his ult looks great. I'm set, and it's a great transition, Scott, to talk about the character exclusions. Because a lot of my favorite characters aren't in the game anymore. Because that is one of my this is not a complaint that I'm dinging the score for. By the way, this is just like a personal, like, I don't understand it, but I still kind of get it, I guess. Complaint. We talked about this a lot in the preview that Xavier and I did, but there's only one OG Dragon Ball character in the game, and that's Teen Gohan or Teen Goku. You get Teen Goku, you can unlock, and he's just plays just like he does in BT3 for the most part. He's got his Great Ape transformation and everything. I guess you can count Yajirobe and Master Roshi too, but like this version of Master Roshi specifically pulls a lot more from Super because he's got a more active role in the Tournament of Power arc. First active role Roshi's had since Dragon Ball, basically. And then Yajirobe is a Dragon Ball character, but he does just show up in Z and has a role in at least the first arc of Z. So, but all the other OG Dragon Ball characters like Chi-Chi and Tao Pai Pai and like a lot of and General Blue are just gone. Like Ader's not there. Unless they're like, I don't think they're secret characters that I just haven't unlocked. I just don't think they're in the game because they weren't in the build that I was able to play, and I haven't seen any. There's no Dragon Ball content that I have seen in this game outside of like the World Martial Arts Tournament, which isn't even just a Dragon Ball thing. So I just think they're gone. PyCon's gone, so there's no other world tournament. There's no rep from like the other world tournament arc, which I'm not happy about. PyCon's not like the end all be all of characters. But like not having a rep that was in the previous game that is like a super like underrated and underrepresented character who's in the Janemba movie and Janemba's there.
Yeah, he's a nice to have. You know,
yeah, he's
like
a nice to have. Like, same with like Nova Shinron's not there. Like he was really the only other evil rep from GT, other than but they also got Super 17. So like I don't know where their cuts were. I don't know why they cut certain GT characters, other than maybe they just thought GT was too overrepresented for what they wanted. Maybe they're going to do a DLC pack in the future. I don't think so, based on like who they included. They could do an OG Dragon Ball pack and include some more characters because like Evil King Piccolo isn't in the game. Like there's a lot of representation that was in BT2, BT3 that is not here in Sparking Zero that I'm personally a little bummed about just because I love original Dragon Ball. And the more you can have from not only just OG Dragon Ball, because they're never going to go and let you do like even with Kakarot, like the game that came out a couple years ago where you're playing through the entirety of Dragon Ball story mostly through the eyes of Goku, and it's like a full-on open world RPG that's pretty solid. Like that does not let you go through Dragon Ball. They just never since the Wii really there hasn't been a game that focuses on Dragon Ball, and that's because Dragon Ball Z is the most popular and Super is now the most recent, and GT is now the nostalgic thing. So I don't know where the decision making came down to. If there's going to be future stuff, obviously we're getting Daima DLC, and Daima's coming out soon, which I'm excited to like dive into because I'm hoping that gives me more OG Dragon Ball feels because that's my favorite. But that is unfortunate because like my favorite characters were the Dragon Ball characters because it's actual representation. But in terms of like favorite characters to play in this, I do like some of the changes they made to like adult Gohan got some good changes. I like how he plays and some of his transformations are different. The visuals make basically any super move look awesome, but I love the attention to detail on like mid Goku when he first turns Super Saiyan. I love some of the attention to detail, especially with his ultimate, which is just looks incredible. Obviously just like anybody with like a really cool super is really fun to play. Obviously, the most busted characters are like the end of Super, like GT fusions, like that kind of stuff. They're all wild. I pulled out Broly Vegito or not Vegito, Broly Gogeta in a tournament that I played through earlier today, and like his moves do so much damage and have so much flair to them. Like the level of it, it's nothing that it's never to the level of like what the attention to detail and quality that they put into like his supers from like Fighter Z, but it's pretty damn close, and it looks awesome. And he plays awesome. I really want to I haven't gotten to do a lot with Whis yet because I know he has the auto dodge. Like he's like the strongest character in the game just based on that. So I want to try out more, but yeah, probably like the fusions, the super fusions are my favorite just because of how flashy they are, and even in all their like little animations, they're all very fun. So
You know, one thing I'm very excited about for this game is because I legit have never in my life played PT3 against another person.
Mhm.
It's always been like a solo game for me. So and one of the things that I love about Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 is how fun like the online is because they built like really good systems. Like the fighting in that game is like a really interesting like dance of like substitutions and jutsus. And so I'm actually really excited like to get the chance to play like this Dragon Ball game like against other people, and to see how like the systems of that they've built kind of get altered and used by like the community playing against each other.
you're ready to
Because
see what
like
you're ready to see what the cheese is.
yeah, like I think of it like, you know, I want to know like, oh man, like is there some like wild like Gogeta combo that's cool? And I think that that also can help because I think one thing with like BT3 is like I guess it's just kind of like a solitary experience. There's a lot of cool things in BT3 that like if you look at like I guess like sweats do that like, oh wow, that's like a really interesting way to like mess with the game system to like get a cool attack. And to me, I think the coolest part is like going online and like seeing like actual tech for these characters and like letting that inform how I do my little like uh story headcanon fights. Because I think one thing with BT3 that like kind of comes is like if you play it for just like a long time, it kind of just ends up being like kind of rote. But I think now, like I guess with just like the modern information age and like everybody playing against each other, I think there'll be a lot more depth that can be like extracted from the game, and it'll kind of end up being like to me Ninja Storm 4, where like once you really kind of dive in, like all the characters have like so much depth, and it's really cool. So I look forward to that.
I think it's gonna have a very similar appeal to what like Ninja Storm brings. Obviously, as a 3D arena fighter, in the similar vein of like limited options for what you can actually do. Like you're not gonna be juggling people in different ways a lot of the time. Like you're gonna have to like find what works and what doesn't work pretty quickly. I don't know if it's gonna have the same like dance.
Well, yeah, I mean it's
yeah.
a totally different
Yeah,
like system of fighting. You know,
I
there's
don't
not the
think it's gonna have that
substitution.
same. I think it's gonna get a lot more one sided, just because like the way you can take advantage of people once you're once you're in an advantage state, like, oh yeah, they got launched and they're flying across the map. You can charge, or if you have enough tension, you can use your full power move immediately, and then basically fly across the map, get them in another combo right away, and then hit them with a super while they're still reeling. I think there's gonna be that kind of depth. I'm very excited to see how the point system factors into this because we still haven't seen that used online in the same way, where it's like, okay, you have 15 points max to build your 5-person team. You can go in with Whis and like a level 5, or like Whis and like a bunch of level 1s, and so they're gonna have to find out how to basically beat Whis, and then your characters left are like a lot of lower tier characters in terms of like what they can bring to the table. But then you're gonna have the people who maximize the ability of like the like 2, 3, 4, or 5 star characters, even if they don't have transformations, to like really build out like a solid foundation of a team that then, oh, if they know how to use them better, then you know how to use your characters, or they have a combo that they can do in certain ways. That balanced team is going to beat whatever top heavy, like you're starting fully transformed kind of damage you can output. I think that is where I'm most excited to see. Obviously, I'm a little disappointed that there's no crossplay. I don't think there's cross save either, which is a bummer. If there's no crossplay, there's not going to be cross save. Even though there's Bandai Namco accounts that can connect, that's something that bums me out across the board. But I am super excited to see how that point system comes into play. I mean, the online tournaments are going to, like regular tournaments, matchmaking, ranked matchmaking, custom lobbies, all the custom battles that you can make. I think that's going to be a very underrated thing that people aren't going to appreciate until like probably a couple months down the line, as people get out of the phase of like, oh, I'm just going to play online a lot. I'm actually going to go dive into the custom battle creator. You're going to get a lot of really cool challenges, community runs. There's going to be some speed running stuff there. I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff that people from like the Mario part or the Mario Maker community are going to be able, like, if you're a fan of that, you're going to really like this style of like community. I think that's going to elongate a lot of the appeal of this, except for the fact that that stuff is also limited to platform. So that might hurt it a little bit. Obviously, PC is going to end up being the go-to platform for people that want to do that, because there's going to be mods and all this other stuff to it too. So that's going to be the if you want longevity, go for PC, because that's where a lot of the mods and a lot of the community is going to be, just in the long term. But obviously, there's going to be a ton of community, especially for the first year on PlayStation 2, if not beyond, depending on how well this game is supported in the future. But yeah, that point system and like what you said about how people are going to utilize different characters for that kind of back and forth and optimization is going to be a lot of fun, especially since they kept a bunch of the mechanics from BT3 and BT2. Like, oh, if you start with Gogeta or start with Vegito, they're basically just a regular character. But if you fuse Goku and Vegeta mid-match, that Gogeta basically becomes 2 characters worth of health. So if you're good enough at the game, there are ways you can really optimize your play, because obviously you have to keep keep Goku and Vegeta alive to fuse. You have to meet all the requirements. You have to have enough tension to reach those, or I don't even know what it's called. That second meter. I just call it tension because that's one of the moves. You have to have that tension meter. You have to have that to the point where you can do that transformation. So you have to not only be really good with the characters in the game, but you also have to like plan ahead enough to be like, okay, health's enough here, don't need to switch out here, I'm in a good position to where I can fuse here, have like one really strong character, and then you also get to save points there, and you can bring Goku and Vegeta and then more characters that can flesh out your roster rather than just bringing Gogeta early on. I think that I can't wait to see that kind of depth, along with whatever else the community comes up with. It's gonna be a lot of fun, just to see what people can bring to the table with this. And I think
it's gonna be mad hype. Scott, I always compare like these anime games. They're like 2K for me. I mean, they're just basically sports games. Like if you really rock with like the IP, you're all in. And this is about to be real bad because NBA season starts soon, so it's about to be time for me to just start playing 2K all day. And Sparking Zero comes out, so now it's
Xavier.
I'm dropping everything else. It's gonna be like 2K and doing
Sparking
like
Zero.
weird Warriors trades where I like, all right, if I get rid of Wiggins and then do this, and then I'm just gonna play Sparking Zero. Like that's
First of all, no one wants the Wiggins contract. I don't know what you're doing there. Second of all,
hey, man. All-Star Wigs is coming back.
I'm so sad about just the state of what 2K has become. It is the ultimate. It just feels like a worse money grab than any other, like anything a Madden, than an EAFC at this point. And it's just and because I've been really deep into college football, it's just like they have an ultimate team and they have all their packs you can pay for them, but it's like it's clear that this is not the focus of this game. That people aren't playing College Dynasty to play or college football to play the ultimate team. They want to do that, they can go play Madden. It's more flush out of there anyway. And it's just so nice to see like a sports game where they're not trying to ring you for every dollar that you have. And not even just to make like, not even like, oh, if you pay, you get this premium experience, by like locking off things that should be part of the main experience and then charging you to access them.
Let's full transition into this conversation, because I want to have this talk about. I've wanted to have this talk. It's some form of content, and Xavier knows this because we've talked about it off content before. I want to talk about how bad 2K is.
Yeah,
because Xavier and I are the exact same mindset of, we go into that mode, and Scott, you're the same way with both. All of us have played college football and done dynasties and stuff. We are all here for the simulation element of that, where you get into the nitty gritty of doing trades, of signing contracts, of managing different things or whatever. So what mode of NBA 2K do you think I was the most excited to hear was coming back with a revamp?
My GM.
Correct. Have you played My GM in the new 2K?
Cale, I have not played a new 2K since maybe. I have to look, actually. Hold on. Excuse me.
And I don't fire up 2K until the season.
So you didn't bite out when Xavier, when I sent you and Xavier that deal?
Yeah. I have it. I just don't play it.
The last 2K I got was 2K21, and I'm just gonna.
Oh, you've been free for a while.
I've been free for a while. And here's how free. Let me show you. Let me tell you. I go backwards with hours played. 2K21, 66 hours. These, you know, essentially less hours played than dollars I spent on that game.
Yeah.
2K20, 148.
Yeah.
2K19, 270.
Yeah.
2K18, 248.
Yeah.
2K17, 235. 288. I think the biggest is probably 2K15. No. 2K. No. Okay, yeah. So it's 2K13. The first one I got on Steam. Because I got into the series with 2K11. It was the Jordan one. I was just getting into basketball. Dad bought me 2K11. It's the Jordan one. You can do like all these. You can like take rookie Jordan, put him in today's NBA. All these like alternate history things that are so cool. And then 2K13, I was like, I'm in. Like I had this shitty USB Xbox gamepad, 500 plus hours. I was playing on the cruddiest laptop. I didn't care. And I was doing all and I was like you. I was just doing it by the end of my time in 2K. I just fully transitioned to my GM, my league, and just doing fantasy drafts for my favorite. Like, let me start with the number one overall pick and take the best player in the game and see if I can build a team around them. Then it became taking bad teams and rebuilding them, or like for some reason I was really infatuated with Jeff Green when he had like this breakout season on the Celtics.
Love Jeff Green.
And so I was like, let me make Jeff Green the MVP.
I literally had a Celtics jersey of Jeff. I literally have a Celtics jersey of Jeff Green that was that's laying around here somewhere because I was just putting it in the wash.
My multi-year Raptors file, I turned like Thomas Robinson into like a multi-year all-star. Like, I love this game, and it just got worse and worse.
Yep. Okay, so hear me out. What is the biggest complaint that most people have about the dynasty mode in college football?
The biggest complaint about dynasty in college football, I would say,
it might not be the biggest complaint now, but back like a couple weeks ago, about a month ago maybe, it was the biggest.
So it could be a few things. I could say like how very unpredictable sim results can be, and so like you don't want to play every single game, especially if you built up your program really far. It's like, let me sim to like the big conference games, the big matchups. And it's like, oh, I just lost to an FCS school that which would like almost never happen, and it's like, okay, now I can't this is year 6. And we're like a top 5 team now. I can't compete for national championship because we lost to Old Dominion, or we lost to Jacksonville State, who are 10 overall points lower than us. I would say recruiting is still a little finicky. Other than that, I'm not really sure. I'm trying to think based on my experience what's been the most annoying.
Both of those are accurate to complaints that people have had about my GM recently, but the big one, especially early on in the college football thing that I saw, at least on the Reddit and like some on Twitter, was the fact that you can't customize players or edit players at all.
Yes, so you can
edit some, but you can't edit like you can't edit like positions.
Yeah,
you can't edit
you
like
can do
everything
jersey
else.
numbers for the longest time.
Yeah,
and they I think they did patch changing positions because for example, like
you
if
could
you
do
recruit
that.
athletes and then you can assign positions, you couldn't like change them.
You
based
can go
on
in
what
and change them
group
later.
in.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
they did patch that.
and then like the position changes.
Change.
The position changes menu during the off season has been fixed.
Okay,
so that's improved. But yeah, I think player customization still is really
it is still heavily limited.
So
that is one of the things that people love about NBA 2K is the fact that you can customize your roster, customize your players, use your own roster in like loading things up for like everything else. You can no longer do that in my GM. Everything is stuck to whatever the real roster is. You cannot change positions at all.
That was my favorite thing.
Can't edit players.
Those little ratings boosts. It's like, oh, he's actually a power forward. Let's put him at this. Like putting guy in the news, Karl Anthony Towns. Put him at the 4. He's better as a 4.
So guess what? I haven't played since that trade, but he was a 4 on the Timberwolves. So if you wanted him on, if you could easily trade for him depending on the team you were, because he's not like super highly valued by the Timberwolves in that like scenario. You could trade for him, and he'd be stuck as a power forward. So if you need a center, Like, there's no way to change it. There's no way to do any of this. My GM basically boils down to, you start the season with whatever team you go. You have to build out your basic GM to do whatever. There's no reason you shouldn't go with the one that gives you the most the sports psychiatrist one or whatever that gives you the most in training. Because if you're not maxed out in training with the 3 boosts that you can do to lessen your wear and tear and lessen your injury duration, your players are going to get hurt every other game. You have a very high probability of getting an injury that's going to derail your entire season at any point. I don't know how many times I've done one that basically ended with like within 2 weeks someone is already out with like a season-ending injury, even if they're not like injury-prone player.
That's also still a big issue in college football. Wear
Yeah.
and tear, which
Wear
was
and tear.
worse. It used to be way worse, but like it's like the game just started. Why is my running back like already like halfway, like
Yep.
his meter halfway? It's like, I know we just played Georgia and they're giants. They're just super powered freaks that are just bigger than everyone else. But like it's been a week. Like
Yeah. Like where's the but
and like and just a little quality of life stuff where it's like in between weeks, it's like, okay, can I set it so like we have light practice, so maybe if we are beat
so
up,
you have
we're
that.
less.
You have that in
Yeah.
my GM.
Yes,
But
yes,
the issue
we need that
is
in college football.
it doesn't really do anything. At least it doesn't change things substantially. But the first off, whoever at 2K decided that the best thing to do for my GM was to put all of your executives in a small office and make you run back and forth across this office that has no reason.
No.
With no warping. You can get stuck behind doors, so you have to manually move yourself out of the way after cutscenes. And you have to do that over and over again. And Scott, it gets worse.
So
It gets worse.
I remember the story side of my GM stuff being like really just more tedious than like immersive.
Yep.
So I would just do my league. I would just cut all
That's
that
what
all
everybody.
out. And you just do my league.
That is what everybody does now.
Story related in everything story related
no
in 2K,
story.
especially my career.
No, my career is
just
an entire separate can of worms. I didn't touch my career yet.
Touched my.
I have not touched my career yet. I have.
I'll never touch.
I touched my career last year, and I think I might have streamed it once just because it like we were trying to see how bad it was, and it's real bad. I haven't touched this year's yet. I'm going to. I'll probably do it on stream because I want to see how bad the story is, and I want to see like how much product placement, and how many times I'm gonna have to go talk to Jake from State Farm and all that kind of stuff. How many times I'm gonna have to go do a rap music video,
go to the Gatorade bar,
go to the Gatorade training facility or whatever, all that kind of stuff. So, but my GM gets worse, Scott. So they removed all the story elements. There's no story elements, but there are randomly generated conversations you have to have with your people in this office to talk about like scouting, like your fan base, ticket prices, doing specific things for the owner. How many different like how fast do you think they cycle? Like how many times do you think you have to go through the same one?
I would say you probably have 5 or 6 different conversations before they start to cycle.
Every single person outside of the governor, so like your boss, has 4. And you go through all of them every season and they do not change. So after your first season, you're doing the exact same ones. The governor has like 6 different options that he can ask you. They're all demands. They're all stupid. Some of them make no sense. You could win the championship and then he demands you go get 5 first-round picks.
This reminds me of like FIFA's manager mode is like that.
Yeah,
that's a big EAFC. Sorry.
Yeah, it's whatever. That it is
because it'll be like be like we won the treble. We won because I used to do that a lot. I used to be really into EAFC, specifically manager mode, and I would take like small middling clubs and build them up, or I would take like these big clubs, these massive transfer budgets. See what zany nonsense team can I make with $500 million at my disposal. And there'll be things where it's like, oh, we've won the treble. We won the domestic trophy. We made it to Champions League, even though we weren't predicted to. We, blah, 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 all this stuff. Oh, we didn't sign 2 16-year-olds from this one country, so your job's in jeopardy. It's like, what the fuck are you talking?
So it's even worse than this, though, because your job's never in jeopardy. You could do whatever you want. I tell the dude to screw off all the time, just to be like, hey, no, we're not getting. There's no way to get 5 first-round picks and maintain the roster that we have that we just won a title with. Or every other year, whoever your star player is one of the people in your office or whatever. So like, if say you're the Timberwolves and you're talking to Cat or Ant or whoever, And
Mhm.
like it'll be like you get off to a 1-6 start or whatever, even if you have a winning overall record or whatever over the course of like the last 3 seasons. He'll be like, "You're a clown. You're stupid. No one likes
Trade
you.
me.
Wow, we never see you. Yeah, either trade me or do with this or do that or whatever." And I'm just like, I don't. There's no winning. There's no reason to play that mode over my league or my NBA or whatever. And it doesn't even matter because my NBA, the only feature they added to my NBA this year was they added another time period. So I think we talked about this once. It was either me and Xavier or me and you or whatever. I don't understand why the next iteration of my NBA. So Scott, you haven't played it in a couple years. So my NBA,
No.
which was previously my league or whatever,
Yeah.
is the completely customizable league mode
Yes.
where you're the GM of the team. A couple of years ago they added it to where it's based on time periods. So you have the Jordan and Bird era, you have the Jordan era, you have the Kobe era, you have the
Okay.
you have the LeBron era, and then you have the modern era.
Okay.
So you have 5. This year, I think it started as 4, and then they added I think the LeBron era, and then this year they added the Curry era.
So instead of you having to like go and manually download historic rosters, you can just
start
select an
in a
era.
specific year.
Okay, all right,
So,
that's a
really,
good
really
feature.
cool.
I like that.
Except for this year, they only added the Curry era, and everything else is the exact same.
Okay.
And so my thought process is why not go through the trouble of doing every year that you have access to between the Jordan and Bird era that you started with, which is like their 4th year or something. I think their 4th or 5th. It's the year when Jordan comes into the league, is when that starts. So why not go from there to the modern era and do every single year as a starting point, because you already have all this data and most of the players in. So just do that, and that way anybody can jump in at any point, including these 5 starting points or 6 starting points.
The keyword you said is take the trouble to do it, or
yeah, I know they're never going to do it because it's too much work. Because they don't. It's the same reason. I don't know. I watched like the preview video or whatever, or by accident on like the PlayStation page or whatever, for like the developer or whoever of the MyGM mode, being like, yeah, we've overhauled MyGM and we did this and we did that, and I'm like, okay, that sounds promising. And then it turns out to be what it is. Like they just have people come out and say things because it's just word service. And then they know they're going to have their already established audience, so they just need to get a couple more people to buy it because they're interested in those modes that they've changed to or whatever. And then it feels like a gotcha because none of those modes are good. Like I haven't even done.
You're not getting me.
I was done with my GM that I haven't touched the game. I'll jump back in here in a bit at some point because it's my guilty pleasure game. I play it but I also play it when I'm on the treadmill. I just do simulations while I'm on the treadmill. So, like I'll jump back in to play that, and I'll play my career mode just to see how bad it is. But it's exactly what you said. It felt like such a refreshing breath of fresh air, like a breath of fresh air to have college football come out and be this experience that is clearly tailored to the people who love the hardcore nitty gritty of of what college football is or fantasy football is. Even Madden has made changes in the last several years to like be more tailored to those people, even though the franchise mode in Madden is still like pretty janky and like really slow to simulate. But they at least add stuff to make it a better detailed experience, even in spite of those things. I know I don't play FIFA or EA Sports, so I don't know about how that has evolved over the years. But 2K outside of the stuff that they've changed in terms of gameplay, which I don't care about most of the time, and probably my career and then some my team functions, is feasibly the same game as 3 years ago. And there's nothing different in terms of the offerings overall, but it's cost $10 more. I mean, I only bought it because Xavier and I got a deal because we got it for like $30 off or whatever. That's the only reason I bought it day one.
That honestly, the more recent into the 2K I've gotten into, it started with like, I mean, I would like 2K15. I was like, give me the Kobe version or whatever. Pre-order, give me that shit. Like I know I'm gonna be playing this. Give me the good stuff. And then it became like, oh, wait till it comes out, then I'll buy it. And then it's like, now wait till it goes on sale. And now I'm what 2-3 years sober, And
I'm almost. I don't think I'll ever go sober, Scott. Unfortunately, I think I'm too unless we get a competitor or some version of something that can scratch my itch for like basketball relate. Like if we get a college basketball game, then I might go sober because I know that might give me something else to scratch the management itch, or scratch that itch other than like fantasy sports because you can only do that so much.
Yeah, from a gaming standpoint, like in terms of like playing the actual game, like college sports games are just much more interesting to me. I just think, having the pageantry and tradition and the crowds in a college football game versus a Madden, it just feels like better. It just feels more real and more like I don't care about like I like the Bears. I don't care about the Bears because they're owned by, a rich family and all this stuff. But like these small middling, 2-star, 1-star programs that are like, have either like
It's
been
also the
through
sense of
like
progression that you can get.
yes,
It's completely different than like simulating a season in like unless you go back in the NBA games and start from like the Kobe era and you know who you want to draft and you're trying to set
right.
yourself up to draft like 2 top picks in like this specific draft so you can pair X and X together. Like that's what I like about the 2K games and why I keep going back to them is because I'm like the NBA is my only sport that I watch everything of. I consume everything NBA. I watch it. I consume media. I read about it and everything. So that's like my sports addiction or whatever. So I loved going back and doing that. What if Vince Carter's Toronto Raptors actually were good and had a good GM and could bring in people to pair with him that would make him want to leave or something when he was like at the peak of his powers and he could have like his prime there. Like that kind of stuff. The storytelling there to me is as impactful as what you're talking about with college sports, but the progression you get from the college sports game is completely different because you only get 4 years max with a player, maybe 5 years if they're red shirting the first year you
you
recruit
redshirt them.
So
It's like, and it's like it'll be like this is a great kid. Like the team's really shit right now. I'm redshirting him, so when the team's good, he's still here.
And then you can then have that in mind going into that season when you're recruiting to be like, okay, I've got a really good quarterback that's going to come into his own in a year. I need to get a good O-line online now. I need to start I need to start getting a good O-line. I need to really hit the transfer portal to see if I can get an established running back now. Like all these things, and you only have a set amount of time to do that before you have to start that entire period over, which is completely different than being like, oh, I've got Vince Carter for 10 years or whatever. And I only need to hit it once, or I only need to hit twice to make sure I have a starting 5 of like really good players to build around. Because at that point that if you're starting in that Kobe era that they're talking about, where it's the year after, it's the right after the three-peat for the Lakers.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I've got Vince Carter and I've got the LeBron draft coming up. So if I tank this year, I can get LeBron or I can get Wade or I can get Bosh to pair with them. And then guess what? The next year I can get Dwight Howard or next year I can get Chris Paul. Like you already have that in your head of going, which is completely different than in college sports where you're getting the completely randomized element of you don't know who's in the next class. You don't know who's coming. You don't like what is your pipeline? What is your this? What is your that? Like that's why I like the MyGM element of randomness because you have to build out your character. You get to pick your starting stats. You can build up your reputation as a GM with the other GMs or with the people. Like I like the old MyGM. It was just too tedious. And then so when they said they were bringing it back with like a more focused approach, I was like, "Oh, that's interesting because I can see where the appeal of that would be." And then they've completely fumbled the bag and made it a completely stagnant, terrible experience. Yeah. So, like, I want what college football has, what college football did for its game. I want that for a college basketball game, or I want a facsimile of that experience to then make its way over to the pro games, where you have a much more detailed ability to do that kind of stuff without having the ability to then go and like, oh, I mean, you could up your experience like gain in those modes or like turn off like injuries and stuff still, but you can't like whatever. You get what I mean? Like I just don't think what 2K has changed and what 2K offers is a terrible product. I think 2K is a bad game. Like if I was to review this version of 2K, not from a like just as what I enjoy about the game and what I played, and in terms of like what I've had to deal with for monetization, just like turning on that game, I would give it like a 5 out of 10. And that's me being like, I know what the appeal of the game is.
Until they are going to start feeling their bottom line start to take a hit, when people start to walk away from this game, they're not going to change until that happens, because there are going to be people who buy the Ultimate Editions and get their My Team packs and get all their starter VCs.
They're going to
so they
spend
can make their My Career
$100 every time
character,
they want to build out
go
a
to the
character.
park and be an 85 overall already, more the rest of us, and then you feel stupid because you're like, oh, because My Career's like, oh, you're this star college player, welcome to the NBA, and then you're like a 65 overall, and it's like, I'm terrible. I'm like, my guy literally is terrible. How am I?
And then
how am I supposed to win?
You get the fake like, oh, this and that of like, oh, you welcome to the league. You're getting benched, like scripted things, even though you're scoring like 100 something points as a 70 something overall. Like it doesn't matter. Until 2K. Ironically, EA is giving itself its own competition, which is a good thing. I think EA is going to benefit from having the two teams working on two different football games. And you're already seeing it a little bit with how this Madden has improved a little bit. And I think next year it's going to improve even more. I think EA is giving itself its own competition in that space. But there's no competition in the basketball space right now.
No.
Like live fizzled when it tried to come back, and there's no other competition. I think EA wants to get back in, but I don't think they know how. I don't think they know how to make it different enough from. But now that they have college football, maybe they'll aim for college basketball instead of NBA. Or maybe they'll aim for NBA, and then they'll take what they learned from doing college basketball and what they've learned from Madden complaints over the years and do something. EA is on an uptrend in terms of its sports games for the most part. Like, obviously, they're still monetizing the hell out of it, but they're monetizing it in their own way compared to the aggressive monetization of 2K. Because 2K, the My Career mode, like, you can go in and you can spend $100 and you can have a maxed out character almost immediately, barring a couple of things here or there, and then you never have to do the My Career mode and you're just going to play the My Parks and stuff. But then as soon as something changes, as soon as something changes in the meta or whatever, or they nerf something, then some people will even go spend another $100 to max out a different character with a different build and a different like thing, because that's all they do. And those are the whales. It's the same thing as a gacha game. It's the same thing as like certain MMOs. There are whales in that game that keep that game alive and keep that game thriving as a money whale for 2K. That is going to keep that game from changing into a better game because they just want to keep printing money. So
the aggression of EA games, it's essentially just they kind of throw those little banners at you as soon as the game starts, and essentially the worst thing that EA games do is like when your game loads, they'll put the little here's the latest My Team pack or whatever,
the advertisements,
and rather than you instinctively you're hitting A because you're trying to get to the next menu, and that just opens up Ultimate Team
every time I go into 2K.
In particular.
Do that every time.
And that's really the extent of how aggressive they are with it, because
you don't monetize. They don't monetize the other modes.
Right. Like, and the people who are going to play that, they're going to go there anyway. They're there for that, and they're not necessarily really playing college football too much anymore. They're the people who really care about Ultimate Team, either because they like the competition or they monetize, or they're content creators and they make videos off of it. They're waiting for Madden, and they were waiting for EAFC. Those are the big ones for those games.
And I have another vertical, and I'm sure that I'm sure they want to do that with the NBA too. And I'm welcoming that because I want the competition in that space. Competition of any kind in any space is good because everybody else will have to then fight for a better product. Every time a new console comes out, or a new exclusive is coming out, or a new anything is coming out, the only reason we're getting better and better and better things in certain spaces is because there's that level of competition. Like, the only reason the PS5 is better than the PS4 is because the Xbox Series X is better than what the PS4 was in terms of like hardware and stuff. Like, the constant competition is what's making things get better and innovative and everything. We need that in every space, and right now there's not that in the basketball space. There's not that in the college football space, which could become an issue in the future if EA slacks, but I think they saw how much of a cash cow this was, that even though they don't have to iterate on it as much because they found a winning formula, quote unquote, like, I think they know that they can't sit back and just let that roll.
No, I think eventually I do think these games kind of do reach there's only so much you can add in terms of like features. yeah, there's a oh no dear, poor Justin, he just fumbled the ball. The Steelers Cowboys did start, so now I have to watch my boy
He's
who I've
cooked.
defended for years
You get to watch him on my
slip,
team now.
slip and
Yeah.
slide in the rain. Um, but yeah, I think I would like to see sort of a bit more story elements in like the dynasty mode, like where like they present certain scenarios to you, even just little fun dumb things where it's like, oh, your starting right guard got caught drinking, like or just like
Yeah,
little
or
fun
maybe
dumb
like
stuff like that.
like scenarios like that. Where well, I don't think
But
they're ever going to do
have
that, but
but
like
yeah,
I know exactly what you mean. Like, oh, maybe like you've been playing really well like over the course of a year or two, and like a random like 5-star recruit is interested in like having a meeting with you or something, like anything like that
Mhm.
that adds a random element of, because that's what my GM tries to do, but it does it in such
Yeah,
a bad way that, and it's such a way
yeah.
that just recycles itself over and over and over again.
The
Like, yeah.
the what's it and so we were talking about how poor my career is in
Mhm.
NBA 2K. Road to Glory in college football does do stuff like that.
Yep.
There's a great example where I know I'm a running back on Oregon State, and I was pretty beat up by the end of the game, and there was an essentially you have a limited energy that you can spend on each week on training,
Yep.
studying, brand
Balancing out your
promotion,
stats essentially.
yeah. And so I didn't have a lot of energy because of some promotional thing I was doing, and I was pretty beat up. But then like a surprise like quiz came up, and there was an option. It's like, okay, you spend the rest of your energy on studying, or you can cheat. And I was like, oh no, I'm a good boy. No, I'm not gonna cheat. And so I spent all my energy studying. And then the next game, it's a rainy game, and I didn't do any recovery. So my wear and tear is like red. First time I'm given the ball, coughed up a fumble, and I was out for the. I like coach didn't put me in for the rest of the game, and it's like, shit, I should have cheated. But even just like that, it was like it's like you're like ways where you can make your own narrative.
They
I
should
love
have
that
an
in
option
games.
to turn on.
That's why
They should do
we
that and then
talk.
have an option to do that where it's like toggle. You can toggle it on and off, but you can add these elements of randomness that
Mhm.
give it, that even make it more of your own experience. Because every time you do that kind of stuff, it's your own experience. But
Mhm.
being able to toggle on a random like set of, oh yeah, every like week you might get this happening or you might get that happening, like that kind of stuff. I do agree. I think that would fit really well in what they have, as long as they do it well and give you the option to turn it off, because I can see that also completely degrading the mode
Sure,
to the point where a
sure.
lot of people aren't going to like it as much.
Yeah, I get that.
So, but yeah, so that was our sports segment. We will probably have a lot more of these moving forward because Scott and I like talking sports, and Xavier is also a sports boy. So we'll probably have more of these. We'll probably won't rant on 2K again, because I don't think. Well, I take that back. Xavier's going to start playing it more and more and more moving forward.
I mean,
So maybe
it is interesting hearing like the complaints you guys have and like the complaint because I don't interact with the community of a sports game like at
neither do
all.
we.
Like,
We
you
were
know.
just talking about how we don't.
No, yeah,
that
but
was
like,
all like our own
yeah,
experiences.
I mean that's why like I talk. Yeah, but like I
Those are
don't
my
hear.
feelings.
Yeah, I don't hear that. I mean, you guys are still a part, you know, but like I don't hear that at all because I just play the game and vibe. And so it's like, and but also I don't play the modes you guys play either. Like in college sports, I mean everybody plays that, but I still play like a lot of play now, and I just kind of do that. And in 2K, it's all play now and my league. But with my league, like to me, when I play, like when I hop in, I'm sort of like fascinated by like some of the cap stuff that they've added to like my
Yeah.
league, like with like the apron and all that. And I like going into the minutia of like looking at my salaries. And I think that's one thing that 2K does
Yeah,
really
that's the
well
best. It's
is
one of the
like
best things they do is that
the
they really
fantasy
have like a,
aspect.
and they
Yeah.
let you customize that to where if you want easier trades you can, but if you want to do the real hard stuff, you can really get into it. You have to work around the hard cap because the free agent signings that you can do under the hard cap are actually what you would be able to do under the hard cap. Like you can only
Yeah,
like
and the
if
apron
you're,
restrictions this year, it's like all
yeah,
the different
like you
things that
can
you can do.
literally
Like you
like
can't aggregate
you
salaries.
can't aggregate salary. Well, I don't know. I don't think they've gone that far into
Yeah,
it,
yeah, but like that's the
but
thing. Like
but
it's they've added
they did
minutia
do
like
it this year. They did add the ability. It might have been there last year too. I don't remember. But this year they added the ability where if you're under the hard cap, you can split your mid-level exception. So you can sign multiple people at like the mini mid-level exception
that.
to fill out your roster. instead of having to give a full meta level exception and then not having it at all, or only having the option of yes or no. So like there's a lot of depth to that that is really good. It's just that they only iterate on that a little bit compared to where they just continue refreshing the other stuff that they know is where most people spend their time playing. But I get what you're saying, Xavier.
Yeah, but like
where
it's
you spend your
interesting.
time doing it.
Yeah, but like it's interesting hearing that perspective because it's like I think back to like the 2Ks I didn't like, and a lot of that was like I thought 2K23 was horrible because I thought the gameplay was like I thought they just muffed that up.
Yep.
But it's interesting like playing college football. It's like, oh yeah, there are like these things that might have been like a part of other 2Ks or things that maybe I do sort of like just in my own experience of just playing the game, just kind of like vibing, where it's like it would be cool if they expanded on that a little more because they do have like they try to do the story stuff, but they just are lazy with it, or they've added like random elements to the career mode. But then I think, or like the my league mode. But then you look at college football and it's like the random elements of like recruiting or just like even playing as your own character is so much different. And you really think about how much I guess of the content is locked from like the scummy monetization or things, because I would imagine I wouldn't necessarily be like the biggest guy into like my career, but I've played through my character going to college in college football because it was a mode that was there.
Yep.
But I don't touch that in 2K because it's like, all right, like am I really gonna dedicate like Final Fantasy level hours to to 2K?
I'll tell you right now,
and but like you have
never
to do
worth
that
it.
if you want even like a starter.
Never
And it's
worth
like,
it
why would I do
ever
that? Yeah.
to play my
Yeah, of
career
course.
unless you are willing to spend like $20 minimum.
Yeah. Or if it's just like it would have to be like legit your favorite mode. Like you'd have to.
I have
Yeah.
not. The only time I touched that mode is if I wanted like the last 3 games, because I used to spend the first. I used to spend the first week only playing that mode until I got bored of it, and then I'd move on to playing my league or my gym or whatever, and then that's what I stuck with. And now all I do is play legit simulation modes because unless I want to see how bad my career has gotten, because like last year's game, I mean, you can ask some of the people in the Discord, in my Discord, Xavier, about the experience that they had watching me play that game, because I would stream it in the Discord, of like the shooting mechanics weren't great. Like the story is terrible. You have to deal with like a romance that they want you to care about that's on the verge, and you have to like try and fix it while you're doing this other thing. You're trying to take over the city in terms of like your reputation. And so you're going to play like 1-on-1 games or 2-on-2 games with like Kevin Garnett and Devin Booker, and Dr. Disrespect is in that one, which is hilarious. You have to team up with him at one point. There's one where you have to go you go run around to different parts of the city to do like promotional stuff with like rappers, and you have to do a rap and like find lyrics. You have to do like weird TikTok stuff. Like it's so stupid and so overblown and dumb, with like cameos from people that I didn't know who they were, like TikTok stars or whatever. Like what, it was over my head, and I played like 15 hours of it just to like experience it and see how bad it got, because I hadn't played the previous years. And it's like I just can't recommend it to anybody unless that's the only mode that you want to play.
And there's one thing where like sort of like with how they handle career, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, oh, like if you guys were pushed by like an NBA Live, despite them fumbling so hard, like you would put in that level of like NBA 2K11 type effort, because it'd be like, all right, like we got a little competition here, let's do the LeBron mode, and then you play like LeBron and St. Patrick.
Yeah, or like or they've got like my NBA Live is coming out with a new game. They've completely revamped their old. They've got a dynasty mode that's insanely, like, you can completely customize everything, and they have random elements to it. You can be the coach, you can be the GM, you can be this or that. Like kind of like the college football, like, or the closer to what Madden does, where you can choose what role you're doing. You can choose a player, you can choose a coach, you can choose the owner or the GM or whatever. Like maybe they go in depth like that, and then 2K is like, oh, we really have to pay attention to our single player stuff, because if we don't pay attention to our single player stuff, all those people are going to go to the other game and not come back. Like they're going to lose, even if it's a smaller portion of their player base, they're going to lose that amount of player base. And if they lose those players, guess what? If Live then takes those players and has that base, they can not only improve that, but then they can spend more time and more money on the multiplayer stuff to then try and combat what 2K does there. So they're winning. So they have more of a like it just gets the ball rolling of what they're winning and where they're improving. Like it's just
And it's obviously like a different scenario, but I like because it's different developers. Like it's not the same teams or whatever.
Yeah.
But 2K is a publishing house. But like I think like the last time like 2K sort of felt that kind of pressure was like when they first switched to I think like the Xbox One, and that first 2K was so bare bones and so bad that they had to kind of like, all right, like we have to like add all these modes, and like that first transition to next gen. But specifically what I wanted to bring up was the WWE games, because WWE 2K20, I think it was 2K20, might be like the worst game.
Yeah,
one of the worst.
That's the one that literally caused them to be like
glitchy, but and they had to take a year off.
They had to go to WWE and say like, we're taking a year off of publishing the game because we need to improve everything.
And the games have been fire ever since. Like the last year's one was very good, and then this year's one is very good. And they like completely revamped like the systems. Like the career mode is like way more interesting.
I just got that game for free on PlayStation, and I know. So heads up, I know nothing about wrestling. Like I the only wrestling stuff I know is my cousin was super into it for like 5 years when he was younger. So I took him to a couple WWE things. So I've been to a couple, and I like the stuff, and I like seeing it on my Instagram feed and stuff. So, but I'm tempted to go play the career mode in that because I've heard it's good.
Yeah, like
it's fun.
like when they took that year off, they legit like just fixed the game, and it was like, oh, so y'all could have just kind of been doing this the whole time. I think that's what 2K. Like I think they have that ability. Like they have the ability to make like the issue is game.
The issue is
frustrating that they just
the player base for the NBA game is so much bigger and so much more just like basically like red pilled in terms of like they're just gonna keep buying the game because they keep feeding them the slop that they like.
I mean like you gotta cater to it, but like I mean like Call of Duty, like there are big game franchises that have sold well but have been like, all right, like some shit's going south, like we have to
but the critical reception for 2K has never reached what apart. Like Call of Duty, like, and I agree that that's a good example, but like Call of Duty has previously been critically acclaimed in terms of like going into like game of the year discussions and stuff. 2K has never had that reputation. It is just a good sports simulation game that is always being reviewed by people who typically like those games or are like, I don't understand this enough to understand where the flaws are, so I'm going to give this a mediocre to good. And then all the like it doesn't hit the same way when the games critically aren't doing as well, because if a Call of Duty game falls a little bit, they're like, okay, what did we do wrong? If 2K flops between like a 7 to a 6 or something, they do not care.
Yeah. Also, I think like you brought up Madden. Like Madden is my like how y'all are with 2K. Like that's me with Madden. Like I just stopped playing it. But like I think Madden got to the point as well where like not only did it like it still sells well, but like I think there was like a legit disinterest in what I would imagine like even Ultimate Team was. And then it's like, all right, like we have to like actually make a real game.
Yeah, it was what like was that 2 or 3 years ago, Scott, where they kind of overhauled it a little bit.
We're talking Madden here?
Yeah.
I think it was like 2 years ago.
I'm not sure. Honestly, Jacob would probably knows more about Madden than any of us.
Yeah, probably.
He's deep in the woods with that. I was really never like in terms of like the big sports games. I kept up with FIFA and EA to a degree, just because I got really big into soccer the past few years, like after like 2018 World Cup. And Madden just really kind of like I'd try it and be like, this isn't really for me. Like I was just waiting for college football all these years, and then they gave it to me, and now I'm not paying attention to any other sports games except for backyard sports, because that brought back my childhood, and it's like that's how I got into computer games.
I want there to be more
going to the library. Borrowing backyard sports, and because all you need to do is just install it once, then you just had it. You didn't have to like reinstall anything or put the CD back in. You just had the game, and I would just do that for baseball and soccer and football. And like, I don't know what those are going to look like when they're the new ones. I know they're re-releasing the old one on Steam. It's like I have the emulator. I'm just going to play that already. Like I've been playing this game.
But Scott,
I'm not going to pay I'm not going to pay $10 for.
But there are leaderboards now, Scott.
That does tempt me a little.
I know with how this year's going, it's going to end up.
Oh, that's what they should do for college football. like score, like your dynasty gets scored based on like not
you
just
can
your
put it
recruiting
online.
class but your success.
Yeah.
And just like, and it's like, and then it's like they could even have like scoreboards that are specific to individual schools. It's like who had the best Marshall rebuild, like who did the most with Kentucky or
They're never
Boise
gonna do
State.
that.
Oh no,
They're
that's a
never
good
gonna do
idea.
that. It is, but
EA,
they're never
EA,
gonna
send
put
the
that.
check. Send the check. It's a good idea. Send the check.
Look, you can go pitch that to EA. Maybe they'll
I
give
would
you.
be. I would.
Look,
I'd
maybe
be a
they'll give
college
you a
football
job.
influencer
Give you
in a
the job.
heartbeat.
EA, hire this man.
Hire this man.
I don't know if I'd want to work for. I don't know if I'd want to work for 2K. If I'm being honest.
Oh man.
That you get yelled at a lot.
I'm near the point where I can't really say no to any
Okay,
work,
yeah, like we're both still unemployed, but like
I just
you know
would
what
update my
I mean.
LinkedIn. I wouldn't tell anybody I'm working there. I'd be like, hey.
That's true. I would.
Yeah,
I got
this cool
that's
little
not
job,
going on
I'm
socials.
chilling.
I would not.
You're not DM me about.
I'd only communicate with
You'd see
people
me
through
getting like nice lattes, but that's it. That would be the only
Nah,
indication.
I'd put like all of my like I want to poll the people on like what they want to see in modes and stuff through official channels, and that's it. Never ask like myself. Yep, agreed. Yep. Let's
right.
go. Let's go
I feel
get
like
this.
In terms of
I
feel like we need to talk about another major gaming franchise. We're not talking about Madden, or we're talking about another game that appeals to the masses.
We're talking about another game that should have gone the WWE route and took more time to make the game good.
Well, I mean that we're kind of gonna get into that, but we're talking Halo. As we've been recording, first want to give a shout out to Space Station Gaming. As we're recording, they reverse swept Optic in the grand
Did they announce
finals.
this while the Halo got
So
like that?
this was this announcement they're about to talk about was before the final.
So they dropped it during finals.
Day.
That's awesome.
The final before the final. Very very League Valorant coded, where it's like it's the last day of the World Championship. Here's something we're working on. Except this isn't like a new agent or a new hero or anything. This is pretty sizable changes happening to Halo. So they showed a video showing like some new
Scott, we're gonna live react to the video right now.
Oh, okay.
I set up the source. I've got the source ready. I'm gonna need you guys to open the video yourselves because I can't share.
Okay, all right,
the audio. But
this is the new Dawn Halo Studios on
I like how Discord suddenly decided to minimize you guys when I did that. So I guess you guys are gonna hold on. This is can I do the mini player? Whatever. Let me mess around with the sizing. This is all live, by the way. We're doing this part live, people. So this is gonna be
you love it.
Yeah, you love this, so I'm not cutting any of this in post because I'm lazy. This is all going to be... I'm literally live resizing this for the viewers. So, don't say I never did nothing for you people at home. This is terribly resized, but we're doing it. So, you guys got it pulled up?
Yep.
Xavier, you got it? Okay.
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna start it in 3, 2, 1.
Chris Matthews, take 1. Mark. This is Casey Wu, take 1. Mark.
I was told that I could just be my authentic self.
I like to get the highlight. I like to highlight the people here.
There's so much to do and so much fun to be had when you play Halo that I feel like I never run out of things to do.
I love intricate stories that take
Halo gameplay is fun. Halo Infinite's probably the best gameplay. We'll get into that later.
I still have not played through every Halo game.
I took a little, like a lot of people, I kind of took a little time away during 4, 5 Guardians. But I came back for Infinite.
We knew we had to make a change in order to.
The only Halo games I played all the way through are 1, because one of my friends, we did it live on stream a couple years ago, and then I played through Reach with my brother.
I've only played Halo 2, and then I played ODST with like a bunch of friends when I was like a kid.
I played ODST,
and then I played like Infinite a little bit, but
I played ODST online. So and then like Reach online because my brother had ODST. I just never played the story of it.
I did. I've done campaigns for 1, 2, 3. I think I did. Maybe I did I don't know if I did 4, but 2 and 3 are definitely my favorite campaigns. I played a lot of Infinite multiplayer, probably more multiplayer than I played.
I played Infinite multiplayer.
That's not true. I played so much Halo 3 multiplayer. That's not true at all. Yeah, obviously Infinite was not the big smash hit that Microsoft expected, and so now this represents kind of a big pivot. And we're talking over a lot of the important things they're saying, but we'll get into that because there's a big long blog post that we're not going to read entirely, but we are going to dive through some of the highlights that I've collected. Yeah, this looks good. I think one of the biggest drawbacks to Halo, and I was seeing this watching like the World Championship gameplay while we were talking, is it does look a little dated. Like the graphics and the environments and sort of textures, it does look older. And kind of can't have that anymore.
See, well, they're talking about right now, like he just said, like it used to be best in class. Like it was when it came out best in class.
Yes.
Like they're even acknowledging it.
So once Project Foundry had been approved,
Yeah, I appreciate like Halo does have like a bit like, I mean, you could just look at a screenshot and be like, that's Halo, but I thought a lot of the at least with like Infinite, I don't really think there's like a single map or anything that like I remember. Like I don't think it was a very like
there's no blood gulch.
It's not like Halo, yeah. But there was nothing where I was like, that's an Infinite.
No blood
map
gulch
right
or Zanzibar or anything that's like when you see that you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember the moment. I remember playing that for hours, being up late.
Yeah, because I think that's a big reason why I bounced off.
But there is
just
so much
like,
iconic imagery in Halo. It's really such a massive. Like it is definitely Xbox's biggest franchise. Like pure Xbox franchise, it's Halo. Halo's #1, and I think that's why this is such a really an important decision that they're doing with all this.
That's been completely taken over by the Flood.
I wanted to give our team the opportunity to really express an alien world.
Some of these like Flood occupied places really this seems more like something you'd see in like a Doom or like
this looks like Helldivers. It looks like a nest in Helldivers.
How beautiful everything looks, how incredible the environments look. I don't think we've seen anything quite like it in Unreal Engine before.
Fortunately, we have a studio that's really passionate about Halo, about the look and the feel, and I think there's a lot of hunger to really collaborate, to move forward together.
Foundry was an initiative that touched on every part of the creative process, everything from concept art, VFX, characters, vehicles, and weapons to make the future games of Halo.
Creating an asset, taking this design, now we can really dig into material foundations. What is it actually made of? How is it physically accurate to the world? Now we get to take all the wonderful legacy assets that we have, bring them to life, and bring them to...
See, like a lot of this stuff is just word soup. Like a lot of people aren't going to understand what, like a lot of the technical babble about Unreal looks at. Like
to be not just working on multiple projects, but also expanding our studio.
As a lifelong Halo player, I think
expanding the studio after laying off 95 people last year. Woo.
And people bring in their expertise.
They made sure to bring it multiple times that they are, we're hiring. And I clicked on the hiring page. It's like there are 6 available listings. It's like great.
I'm sure I'm sure there's like some consolidation within Microsoft to bring people over too.
Yeah, because they closed a bunch of other.
We might hear about that in the future.
Imagine a place where you have the commitment that this is what we want to do, Halo games, and create those experiences, and you can express your talent, your creativity, and your professional ambitions in that place.
We're looking for designers, we're looking for artists, we're looking for engineers.
It feels like a new...
I mean, this is also just day one, so there might be more listings coming in the future.
Oh yeah, this is.
I mean,
this is the
what they're showing now.
They're doing.
Unless they, I'll talk about it before we get into the blog post, I guess.
There's so much momentum that we have right now, and focus and clarity on not just what we're building, but why we're building, and kind of this next phase of Halo.
But I mean, these are like essentially the same people that made, like, it's just a rebranding, but like they made Infinite, right?
It's 343. They haven't shown it yet, but 343 is rebranding as basically Halo Studio.
Yes. They want to kind of get rid of the. I want to say 343 stink because there is a bit of.
Well, because what was Bungie's last game?
I feel like Bungie nostalgia is kind of weird at this point.
Bungie's last Halo game?
Yeah.
It's been so long.
Ooh.
Was it Reach or was that 343? Was it ODST? It might have been ODST. I think it was Reach.
Bungie's last Halo game was Reach.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people say.
A very popular one. So if you didn't pick up anything that was in that video because we were yapping, understand. Halo and Xbox.
Let me summarize the video in layman's terms real quick. They did a lot of word salad about visuals and what Unreal Engine 5, which a lot of studios are very impressed by, and they just released a new tech demo that is like insane with what the lighting is going to do. It's going to save a lot of studios a lot of time and money. Like a lot of great things happening with like engine tech and stuff over there at Unreal that is going to make a lot of difference in how games are made and all this other stuff. They basically talked about how they're going to be able to improve Halo moving forward. That they're more focused, that they're hiring people specifically with like things in mind, and that they are now being more communicative across the team, which is part of the rebrand, about what they want to do and how the future of Halo will be moving forward. Basically just a bunch of different ways to say they're focused on what they're doing next. There's a lot more communication within the team in different departments, and they have an overall idea of how they want to take things moving forward. What I was going to say, Scott, before we get into the actual blog post and the meat of what they said, is that a lot of this messaging and a lot of them just showing off assets and doing a bunch of just like waxing poetic about like communication and internal team stuff and then this rebrand has me thinking Halo Infinite is going to get relaunched in Unreal 5 at some point in the next 2 or 3 years as they work on whatever's next for Halo, whether it be the full relaunch in Unreal 5 or something that they just move it over, kind of like what we'll talk about a little bit with Valorant in a bit too, where it's like a very similar thing to that, where they're just going to move everything over. They're not going to do a whole lot of improvement like at the very specific level, but they might just port it over in general to make it look nicer, run better, add some more content and stuff that they might talk about here in the future. But I think that gives them that vibe.
They do get into that in the blog post. They talk about what's going to happen with Halo Infinite a little bit, but essentially the gist of what's going on with Halo is, if we haven't said already, is they are essentially moving everything over to Unreal Engine 5, made by Epic Games. Obviously, like the standard, like the high standard for a game engine.
It is the big engine that a lot. If you don't have a custom engine that you have made, most big publishers use Unreal.
Yes. So all future Halo projects are going to be built on Unreal Engine 5. They're moving away from Slipstream Engine, which is the custom one that they built. And essentially their reasons for this, as they've gotten into in their big long blog post, is time. It's not necessarily a cost thing. With Unreal Engine comes all of the, you do have to pay for it, and roughly it's like $2,500 per person per year. And so even if you get upwards of like a big studio of it, like you're breaking the bank. And then I think you also owe like there's like a 5% royalty once you make $1 million in revenue from these games. So Microsoft, being Microsoft, has so much money to throw at this, but they just wanted to have like the independence and have their own thing, and and have their own.
They can bring
engine
in, and I know they mentioned it a little bit in the video, where they can bring in people that are talented in Unreal already without having to train them up on their own engine and the specifics, and that will save a lot of time in terms of onboarding people and getting them up to speed with how they will be able to build the game faster and more efficiently with basically, like, as people leave the team, as people come in from the team, because there's so much turnover during long development processes.
Yes. So from the blog post, this is from studio art director Chris Matthews. Respectfully, some components of Slipspace are almost 25 years old. Although 343 were developing continuously, there are aspects of Unreal that Epic have been developing for some time, which are unavailable to us in Slipspace, and would have taken huge amounts of time and resources to try and replicate.
Lighting,
and so I think
lighting, visual elements, like the ability to like just move things around in like backgrounds and stuff, like there's a lot. If you go look at just any Unreal Engine dev blog or something like that from the lab, basically since they launched Unreal 5, and see what it's offering, and most engines that are running now that aren't new don't have access to any of this tech, and you have to implement that yourself. You're not getting a team to do that for you to then be able to use. So like this is them saving a lot of time to not have to implement a lot of the stuff that's going to basically game change what the games look like.
time is for sure the biggest component here. Not necessarily financial costs. I think they're happy to sort of pay Epic, the cost of getting Unreal Engine 5, just because the amount of time it takes for them to put content out. I mean, the very slow drip of content for Halo Infinite has
Is
been
what
like a
killed the game,
major,
basically. It's
been a major focal point of the community. Whereas look at a series like Call of Duty comes out every year, and look at games like Fortnite, Apex that can drastically change up your gameplay loops, add a bunch of new features.
Every season of Fortnite which lasts like 4 to 5 months, like max 5 months, but in some cases 3 months. Like the experience is so drastically different because of all the different elements that they add and stuff. I mean, they just had their Doom event yesterday that completely changed how you played the game because there's this big live element happening, and it happens every single season in Fortnite. Like you said, Call of Duty every year. All these live service games that add new mechanics every single season, or they change things up. Halo couldn't do that, and still can't do that. So that's what they're like. That's part of what they're gunning for, is like the ability to quickly pivot if needed.
With free-to-play multiplayer shooters especially, I think you cannot afford to waste so much time being outside the top echelon. And I feel like Halo has been like that. There was a lot of, Halo Infinite, when it first came out, very popular, got really good numbers, selling well, but it just couldn't keep it up, just couldn't sustain this base. And so I think we're going to see... So in terms of... a couple more focal points to hit home from this blog post. They are not working on any specific one game right now. What we saw today is from something called Project Foundry, and this is essentially an exploratory, like experimental time for Halo Studios, not formerly 343. They're essentially looking into like, okay, now we have this shiny new toy or this shiny new tool set. Before we build anything, we want to see the limits. We want to see what we can do with this. We want to see how we can, play with textures and lighting and gameplay elements and all these kind of things. And we're just going to essentially hunker down and have fun, because once they commit to whatever project they're doing, and they are saying they are considering multiple different Halo games right now, so we could see them maybe jump back into other genres outside of just first-person shooters. We've seen them jump into strategy games with Halo Wars in the past. I think a kind of like XCOM turn-based tactical shooter in the Halo universe would probably be, a banger. Perhaps other strategy-oriented stuff would be really good. A Helldivers kind of co-op based.
I think that was scrapped, wasn't it? Wasn't there one of those in development or something along those lines of like an extraction shooter or something? Whatever. There's like a Halo project that people were hyped about that got scrapped not too long ago.
I think though, with the sort of like the gameplay concept that Helldivers has really popularized or has sort of really hitting its highs with this year. I think if you essentially took a Helldivers type game, set it in Halo Reach, that thing's gonna go flying off the shelves, and Halo fans will be crawling over to like the flood in order to get that. And so, in terms of what you were talking about with Infinite, this is straight from their blog post. Halo Infinite will still be supported through the Slipspace engine. You can expect more operations update to its Forge mode. And then they brought up also something that was brought up a few days ago. In esports, year 4 of the Halo Championship Series, which year 3 just concluded an hour ago with Space Station Gaming Reverse Sweeping Optic, will be coming. HCS is coming back next year. They will be still using Halo Infinite. Obviously the pro scene, which is not as big as a Counter-Strike or a Valorant or a League or anything like that, but very dedicated and passionate. Obviously pretty jazzed about it. So it seems like for now, Halo Infinite is not being put on the side. All the content they still had planned for it, they're going to go forward with. They're not going to port it over to Unreal Engine. It's not like, oh, brand new Halo Infinite coming out. It's the same game, which is still fun in terms of gameplay. In terms of shooting and movement and map design, one of, if not the most solid Halo game in several years. Our friend Hunter is probably the biggest Halo nut of anyone here. And when Halo Infinite came out, we did not see him for days because he was grinding ranked, getting up to Onyx, wherever the highest rank is. And he can attest to, he's spoken very highly about
this being gameplay wise one of the best Halos that's ever been made. And so
I think a lot of
I
where
think, yes,
I think a lot of where Infinite missed, at least in my circles of like a lot of people did like the multiplayer. I played more Infinite multiplayer than a lot of other shooters, just because I had like you guys wanting to play it, or I had some friends that were like, hey, yeah, let's jump in and play it. I had a lot of fun with it, especially like the big team battles, being able to feel like you're in this giant, like just war of attrition with the other team, and how you have to hunt them down, and like you're losing lives or capturing points and stuff. Like it all felt really good, especially for someone like me who doesn't really enjoy shooters as much as other people. I really liked it, but the single player is where a lot of people had their main issues. Like you said, Hunter spoke glowingly of, as someone with a lot of experience in that space, a lot of glowing reviews and a lot of hype around like the multiplayer stuff. Even to this day, like a lot of people really like a lot of the updates that they're doing and a lot of the changes that they made, a lot of the communication that they're still having with their player base. Like it's all, none of that has been the trickle of content on that side is where people were complaining about. They weren't complaining about the communication or the balancing so much. From my limited hearing in that space, the lack of depth to the Infinite single player, even though it was like hyping this up to be like essentially like the Breath of the Wild move for Halo, where it's like this giant open world experience where you get to go do whatever you want and challenge these different things in different paths, and do whatever you like, get all these unlocks and do all these different like side missions and do all this and do all that in like whatever order you want. But no multiplayer being there, like no split screen, and no even just strictly no multiplayer being there at the start, really hampered this from a Halo perspective, because a lot of people, including myself, have these experiences playing Halo as a co-op game, where it's like, oh yeah, me and a friend, or oh, me and my brother, or whatever. Like the only experience I have with Halo playing the story is playing Reach split screen with my brother and loving it, and then me playing Halo 1 co-op through the Master Chief Collection on stream with one of my best friends and really liking it.
It's interesting that both Call of Duty and Halo kind of moved away from like the fluid, like straightforward cinematic, single player fluid campaign, and sort of tried to like spread into like this open world stuff, freedom of movement, move around, tackle things however you want kind of way, which people like in games, but I don't really want it in this game. They like, there's a bit of nostalgia to like the set pieces and the sort of the narrative moments that
there's a reason
existed
why
in
people
original.
go back and play the original Halos, like the Bungie Halos, over playing some of these other Halo games, because of the through line and the like taking your friend through it for the first time and getting to experience certain things through their eyes, like a lot of the React content. Like that's why that's so popular. But like I think that's the fault. That's not the fault of the game so much as it is the corporations behind them being like, oh no, this is the future of games. Like whether that's the devs or the higher ups being like, we need to move in this direction or whatever, who knows. But looking at like the landscape of games and being like, oh no, open world is the new in. We need to find a way to go there, instead of hyper focusing on what Halo has been really good at in the past, of mission structure, storytelling through the mission structure, challenging through the mission structure via different scaling levels or scaling difficulties, and then key moments, key set pieces, key beats to attach to emotionally. Like I think we might see we're kind of seeing like a weird point in games right now because of how unfeasible it is to keep up these long cycles of development without DLC being paid. Like there's a huge argument going on social media right now around Tekken, and how the one of the new stages is not included in the season pass, and they're like how much it takes to make these stages, how difficult it is to communicate this stuff to players, how unfeasible it is for like certain games to, even at $70 price point, make the money back to become realistic goals to profit off of these games as a company. I think we're gonna see this weird pendulum swing of like people, especially companies like a Microsoft, and especially now Halo Studios, be like, okay, cool. How are we going to balance this openness that some people like in these games versus telling a narrative that people like, using set pieces, using like feasibly doing like, because if you're making a game that's 1-to-1, like 1 point to 1 point, and it's just a straight line, we talked about it a little bit with Sparking Zero. There's a reason why you can't go all in on the cinematics in Sparking Zero compared to a Kakarot or a Fighters or a Fighter Z, or even like some of the older games. It's because there are so many what if scenarios that you eventually have to give into using the engine, the in-game engine that you're using for the custom battle mode, to do all these cutscenes, because it saves time and it saves money to make the rest of the game as good as possible. Like, it's not cutting corners, it's using what's available to you. And I think we're going to see a lot of that with whatever Project Foundry ends up being, whatever project the Halo team is going to settle on moving forward, because you're going to see them be like, okay, where can we go the 1-to-1, and where do we need to have that openness? How are we going to make it a really solid linear experience, but also have a lot of depth to give people either options or like open maps to do? Like, where's the hammer going to come down of like, you need to do this? Is it going to be providing a strict like linear story, big cinematics, big set pieces, big like emotional, really well written story, and then you're going to expand on that more with DLC, with story expansions? Or you're going to provide an open thing later through like the use of Forge or something, because that's like that's a way you can still add that level of openness by giving people more tools to create. Like, there's a lot of options that Halo has that a lot of these games don't have, because it has such a breadth of history of being not only linear story, but also Forge mode, also mods, also multiplayer. Like, it has these different pools it can pull from to give openness to the player without having to strictly give them that through whatever the story mode or whatever is going to be in the future, especially since Infinite did have such a solid multiplayer, and it was a good pivot into free-to-play multiplayer for a first time for that franchise. Like, they did a lot right with Infinite, and then they did a lot wrong with Infinite, and now they kind of have that to build on top of everything else that Microsoft has learned through its other failures over the course of since Infinite is launched.
Yeah. I think this is going to be really good for Halo going forward. I think that they have just one, because the speed at which they can get, projects up and running and games out quicker for release is going to be a lot better now that they don't have to worry less about, the speed of onboarding people, having to then develop things in their own engine and then implement them, and then having to troubleshoot if things, if they troubleshoot, it's like, oh, our engine, there's an issue with the engine. Oh, well, we also have to solve that. We can't just ask whoever made the engine.
They can literally, like a lot of companies, they can then maybe contract some people from Epic that work there, to be like, hey, can we get some actual like hands-on assistance from Epic? Like, can we get whatever assistance that offer that Epic has through their actual services and through their actual like people that run the systems and run development on the engine itself. Like, because there's a lot more options there.
We don't know if it was like because of issues with the engine or having like, or why this game in particular took so long to get out. But think about like how long it took for Concord to get out and how the market for that game kind of evaporated by the time it finally launched. With Halo, because you can now get games out faster. Once you're actualizing a project, you have an idea for what you want. You don't have to. You're less. There's less of a risk of, oh, by the time our finished product is now out, the market has moved on, or the player base has moved on to a new trend, or the things that they wanted at this time. I don't know if you guys have heard, gamers are pretty fickle and kind of change their opinions around pretty frequently. This is a revelation of information I'm throwing at you. But if they, if with now using the Unreal Engine 5, they can now get these things out faster, get them into the hands of players, get in the hands of testers, and not be weighed down about having to. I think one person in the video even said, like, there are times where we feel more like a tech company than like a game dev, because we're just working on fixing all these, not necessarily bugs, but having to like,
you have to do all the work on the engine and all the bug fixing yourself instead of having help.
Exactly.
to your point, and I'm gonna bring you in here in a second to talk about some fighting game stuff because it applies to this, not to change the topic. With
You can
Concord,
just say you want to change the topic. It's
no. This is gonna be the last topic. We're already almost. This is gonna be the last topic.
We're getting there. We're getting up there.
Yeah, but specifically with like Concord, we don't know the specifics around like how long that took, how long it took to even because that time frame, that 8-year time frame that gets thrown around a lot in like these articles. We don't know if that's from conceptualization of like start of when the idea was pitched to development, or if that's like when development started. We don't know that. We haven't got a firm answer on that as far as I'm aware yet.
But I think we can agree that the window for the kind of game that they wanted to put out, specifically the kind of price point they wanted, was gone. That was gone. They missed that
specifically.
And then when Helldivers came out, they tried to justify it to themselves, like, "Oh no, we can still do this." But it's like, not for
specifically with
not for
if
this
we're
kind of
talking
game.
that, then yes, they missed their mark on when to launch. If they launched like 2 years earlier, there would have still been like more of an interest in that specific price point, that specific, like, depending on when they launched, there could have been more interest there. I'm specifically referencing the development time that we're talking about here with like, it might take longer for, why did it take so long for Concord to come out? Why did it take so long for Halo Infinite to come out? Halo Infinite was in dev hell for a while. I know that for a fact because we covered that Summit Dot when we were still at Dot, covering like, hey, why did it take that long? Why is it not launching with the Xbox One or the Xbox Series X? Why is it not launching with this? Why is it not launching with that? Like, even up through like a year or 2 years after launch, like we're however long after launch we are now, we're still seeing issues of development pan out with like some of the features that have come to the game only recently, like in the last several big updates. So we are at a turning point in game development where people are starting to have to pick between how long, like, or they're going to have to start picking and choosing how long dev time can take for a game before it is no longer relevant, before it is outdated in structure, outdated in whatever, before it misses its mark like Concord did, for like what the audience is going for. Like, I think that this move to Unreal is not only to save time and eventually money on like dev time for the engine, but also because what you said, we're seeing this more and more with these companies of like, okay, cool, we're going to put out big game 1 in X year, and then we are going to put out update like DLC launch. The perfect example, and we've talked about this on this show before. I think it might have been when we were reacting to the Switch stuff or whatever. We've talked about this before, Scott, and I know Xavier knows my thoughts on this. The perfect storm of how to run an expansion pass has already been found if you're focusing on single player content, and that is what. As much as I don't like how Nintendo runs some of their like post-launch business ops and stuff, or like how they run certain things, the structure that they used for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 DLC, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC, and then Fire Emblem Warriors, or Fire Emblem, I don't remember Three Houses structure, but the one that they used for Fire Emblem Engage, where it's like you get consistent updates for an entire year, and then at some point in that next year, at the end of whatever that timeline is, you get a giant expansion that is basically a full another game, because it's using the same engine, it's using the same assets, and that team has been able to develop whatever that they want to develop for that game. That, in my mind, is the perfect structure of you are consistently getting updates for every X month or every X week or every X whatever time frame you want to do, and then at the end there's the giant thing that is the payoff. For fighting games, the structure changes a lot depending on the fighting game, but most of the time you get a full season, so that means every 12 months you get 4 characters plus whatever else they want to put out. So for Tekken, literally, I think, what is it, tomorrow, or is it like, I know Heihachi's already out in early access, but whenever Heihachi comes out in full.
Oh, he's out officially. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Heihachi's already out. So with Heihachi, not only do you get, if you pay for the DLC pass, you get Heihachi in his stage, but with you also got a free content update that's an entirely new story expansion, first story expansion in Tekken history, as part of the 25th anniversary. That's like a completely new story that ties into the DLC characters. Like Street Fighter, we're in season 2 of Street Fighter. You're getting a new Street Fighter character every 3 months. With some companies and some games have already discovered this, and even on the smaller side of what we were talking about with the game dev time, SNK has figured this out. Where SNK, like I've talked to multiple of SNK's like the people that run their development for different games and different franchises or different sections of their company, where they're like, we know exactly what is expected of us. We are not Capcom. We are not Tekken. We cannot put all of our money behind one title. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to put as much as we feel like we can behind multiple titles and release them in, like, not rapid succession, but in a relative time frame that makes sense for us. And then that we're going to support them where we can. So like we could just, like right now, we just got we got a release date relatively recently for the first Fatal Fury game in over 20 years. Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is coming out, and they announced the first 2 DLC characters. I don't even think we have a full main roster yet before we got the 2 DLC teases. And then we don't know what's happening with Cristiano Ronaldo, who might be playable in the game. Who knows? Like that question mark's still up in the air. But like that game is going to come out, and it's going to sell hopefully better than King of Fighters 15 did, because King of Fighters 15 did not sell as well as they were hoping. But in between King of Fighters 15 and Fatal Fury, the new Fatal Fury, you got however many remasters of the old Fatal Fury games coming with updated rollback netcode and new museum modes and more content. You got rollback netcode update to Samurai Showdown 2019. You got like all these different things that they're doing in between to supplement their fans that they know are going to be there for their other stuff in different ways. And you're seeing that with Arc System Works. Since Guilty Gear Strive came out, basically every other Guilty Gear that has online matchmaking has gotten rollback netcode. All the BlazBlue games have gotten rollback netcode. I think except for Cross Tag Battle, which I don't remember if it had it at launch, but whatever. You get the point. Like certain companies, especially smaller companies, are finding out their niche in like game development, and bigger companies are going to start getting on that train, especially with how indie games are, like how the video game industry is, the backbone of the video game industry right now is twofold. You have new product releases from the big three companies in terms of hardware, not software.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only software that's been selling incredibly well is Nintendo. Like Nintendo's the only one with like a track record of like almost all of their new games hit what they want to sell. Sony has missed metrics. Microsoft has missed metrics. We're not even counting Steam, because Steam is like its own beast in terms of like what they're doing in that market. But with Nintendo, like when the Switch 2 launches, that is going to help prop up the entire industry, because there's going to be more ports, there's going to be more people playing games, there's going to be this, that, or the other. And then it's indie games, because indie games come out, and the indie games are what are making up these success stories, or what are making up these in-between periods between giant games. I think we're going to see a lot more of what big companies are doing right now, where we're getting like Shueisha, I can't even remember if it's Shueisha, whoever owns the rights to Fairy Tail, and Xavier, we talked about this, where Fairy Tail Dungeons came out. That is a game developed by a company that made a previous roguelike card building game, that then was given the license to Fairy Tail to make a Fairy Tail, a version of a game similar to that using the Fairy Tail IP. And they did it, and it was really good, and it was like $13. Like, you are going to see more of that. I think you're going to see Devolver Digital just launched their new arm to work with indie devs and people that want to make big movie IP or big comic IP and all that stuff. Make it with game developers that might not have the biggest name or whatever. Like, they're going to connect those people. We are going to see a lot more of what Disney's been doing, where they people came and pitched them the Mickey Mouse's Illusion Island, which is the spiritual successor to a bunch of the NES, SNES Mickey Mouse platformers. They came and pitched that to them, and they accepted the pitch and worked with them to make the game. You're going to see a lot more of that, I think, where it's like the big developers or the big IP holders are going to work with smaller developers, indie developers, to then make indie games using the IP that are partially owned or just published by the bigger arms. Like, maybe you'll get a Halo side-scrolling shooter or something. Maybe you'll get a Halo like a demake almost of some kind. Maybe you'll get an RPG for some game that some IP that has been dormant. Like, maybe Banjo-Kazooie will come back from Microsoft in a way for like an indie game dev or something. I don't think they're going to do that, because I think they need to really hammer home that IP's back before they can give it to an indie dev and do it. But you get what I mean. I think there's going to be a lot more collaboration in terms of, okay, we don't have the manpower to make this big 5-year game and then also work on something else, unless we unless they do what Hello Games does, where they made The Last Campfire, where it was like a couple devs from that team went and made that game while everybody else still was working on No Man's Sky and stuff, and the new game that's coming out. But
I think we see publishers and developers just turn away from games with big multi-year commitments anyway.
I don't think they do.
That just...
I don't think they can. I don't think the market's going to let them. I think they're going to have to supplement. I think that at this point, I don't think they've shot, like, the industry has shot itself in the foot necessarily, but I think if Tekken 9 came out tomorrow and was not as high fidelity as Tekken 8, I think though less people will buy the game. I think developers have, in a way, shot themselves in the foot with how their dev cycles have been over the, like, Sony cannot have the graphical fidelity that they're going to have with the Horizon Zero Dawn remake, and then the next Horizon Zero Dawn game be not on par. They don't have to go further, and there's not a lot of ways they can go further in terms of visual fidelity, at least right now. But it has to be on par. So maybe they still use the same engine, reused a lot of the assets. The perfect example of this, and everybody points this out, and it's for a good reason, is RGG, the guys who I can never pronounce the studio name, but the people who make Yakuza. Because every Yakuza game is an improvement on the last one, but most of them reuse assets. Freaking Kamurocho was the setting for like 4 games, 5 games, 6 games. They reuse the same streets, same buildings, same whatever. But the heart of those games, the iterations on those games, the different mini games they add, the different battle systems they layer on top of each other, all these things improve the experience. But they're saving so much money by reusing a lot of the same assets that it doesn't matter that they're having to add more stuff on it, because the people are getting more familiar with that. What the Halo people are talking about with Project Foundry and moving to Unreal 5, they're more familiar with the engine. They can make things faster. They can port things faster. They can reuse assets faster and better and make them look better, even though they're the same assets, just with extra layers. Like, you're going to start seeing this stuff spiral into faster game development because people are using these engines better, because people are more experienced with stuff. We're at a point where the graphical fidelity is almost capped. Like, you're going to eventually... We have reached a point where games can still look better in different ways, but there's not a lot of ways you can make a game look more realistic without having to spend a lot more money, and I don't think they can do that anymore. Maybe if they invest in, like, The Last of Us 3 or whatever, it'll look so much better, because that's what that game is known for. That's what that game is going for, and it's a single-player experience. They can find ways to justify that cost. But for a lot of games, you can't do that anymore, because they're already taking 5, 6, 7 years to come out. You can't do that. I think they can't go back in terms of fidelity, but they can start getting smarter about how they use assets. They can start getting smarter in how they use that terms. And in the meantime, they can go to these smaller teams and be like, hey, we want a Horizon game to come out, like the Lego game that's coming out. Same thing. We remaster Horizon Zero Dawn, get it back in the market. We launch a Lego game to get new people in a new way into the franchise. Hey, 2 years from now, let's do a Horizon 2D, like HD 2D RPG to expand the story in a new way, or something like that, to add to the franchise, add to the series, add to the brand, without having to commit your own assets to it, because then you can still release something. I think that's going to have to be the way forward. Like with Nintendo. Nintendo as partner with Grezzo, the guys who just made Echoes of Wisdom, forever. They remade Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for the 3DS. They ported Luigi's Mansion 2, I believe. They ported Luigi's Mansion 2 to the Switch, and then they got to make Echoes of Wisdom, and Echoes of Wisdom is a really good game. They made that after helping with Link's Awakening, the remake.
My partner just powered through it in about 9 days.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about that game. And it's like, so if you can empower these other developers that maybe you've worked with in the past, or like that you partnered with to port, like the company that's helping port all these games from PlayStation to PC, maybe when they're not porting a game, have them, or maybe support them enough to where they can hire a separate team to help make a new game, because they know your system so well. Like, there's a lot of that I think is going to happen in the next 5 years. I think a lot of studios are going to expand their partnerships, expand who is helping with their IP. I think Nintendo, if this is any indication of what Grezzo has done, I think a lot of the teams that they just brought on to help port games, because they brought on 2 different studios that are known for porting Switch games, I assume that's going to be to help, once the Switch 2 launches, port games to both Switch and Switch 2, if people want ports on both. They're gonna like be help assistant studios essentially. I think those studios will eventually be able to make their own games because they're gonna get empowered over time as they build out this repertoire and as they get experience with these systems because they know what works. Because Echoes of Wisdom, from everything I've heard, runs better than Link's Awakening did on the Switch. And you know why? Because Grezzo worked on Link's Awakening, the remake, and it had issues, and then this one runs better because they have more experience with the systems as they were building it from the ground up. So that's where my 2 cents lies in terms of like the partnership element or like the getting another team to help, or maybe bringing on it like with Concord gone. If Concord doesn't come back and Firewalk,
it won't.
Yeah. At this point, we're
It's
all
not.
pretty sure Concord's not coming back in
No,
any
it's
form.
it's
But
not coming back. We're done. We can
so
move on.
with Concord gone,
I know I brought it up first, but we can move on.
Yeah,
Move on.
with Concord gone, Firewalk has all these talented developers that are now sitting there. And I'm sure Sony has already said, "Hey, help." Well, yeah, they're already either walking away or preparing their portfolio to for mass layoffs or whatever. But if Sony doesn't lay those people off, then or like same thing we talked about when we talked about the future of Bungie, Scott, where it's like if Bungie does become a glorified support studio, then guess what? Like those talented developers can then either they can be working on their own thing on the side, or like working on their own like project in a small team while they're also helping development on other things. Like there's just ways to do this without having to sacrifice what is going to hurt. Because I for one don't care about super high fidelity graphics. Like boy is Ghost of Yotei gonna look great, and I trust Sucker Punch to make an amazing game. But they're also going to be smart about it.
Oh yeah.
And they've been smart about it because it's been what 4 years since Ghost of Tsushima, because that was 2021. So a 4-year development timeline for an entirely new Ghost game, pretty solid. If they can get that time frame down to 4 years instead of, because what was Breath of the Wild? Breath of the Wild was 6 years from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. And that was still using the same engine. Obviously, that's a completely different... Nintendo's never going to rush anything. Nintendo's just going to Nintendo. Yeah. But if we can get that 6 years down to 4 years, and in that in-between span, you're getting a smaller experience, or you're getting the story expansion. You're getting what people assume we're going to get with Insomniac, where you get Spider-Man, then you get the Miles Morales game, then you get Spider-Man 2, or you get Spider-Man, then you get this DLC expansion, the story expansion for Spider-Man. You get Miles Morales, which is a smaller experience built in the same engine, but is an entirely original game. Then you get Spider-Man 2. Then people assume we're going to get like the Venom game or the Venom side thing or whatever that leaked, even though that might not be an actual thing and it might have just whatever. That you're going to get that between Wolverine or whatever. Like you're going to see something along those lines. I think that is the structure that people need to start working around to make these bigger games feasible and their 4-year time span between big games matter. Insomniac is in a different place because they have multiple studios, multiple teams. I think people need to start using that as the gold standard of, or the Nintendo DLC pack that I was talking about earlier as the gold standard of, hey, game comes out. You already have a year of content planned and or done to release slowly on a set schedule, and then you do a big thing. And then that big thing is the end. And then after that, you either release a smaller thing between, or you just get your full on the next big thing, and there's like a 2, maybe 3-year gap. At most, in my mind, if you're a big studio working on a continuous thing, it needs to be release thing, year of support. If it's a single player thing, if it's a multiplayer thing, that's different. Year of support for single player thing, big thing to finish off the single player development of like the post launch stuff. And then at max 3 years to your next project.
I think with Halo switching over to Unreal Engine, I think just to tie us back to our story today, I think even though they're paying, obviously you have to pay Epic to use this, and they're gonna have to pay the big upfront cost because they are a big game developer.
Yeah.
Unreal Engine, you or I can download Unreal Engine for free, and unless we make $1 million, they're not going to charge us for us. But if we're
I have downloaded it for free before.
Then we're if we're Halo Studios, then we're paying upfront costs. But I think like you were saying, you can get game cycles down from 6 years to 4. Even if you're paying more per year to license Unreal Engine 5,
that's when you're baking in total cost of a game, that's 2 less years of salary of office space rental.
Total cost of the game. The ability to bring in more people because you don't have to train them up and they might already have experience in Unreal. The openness of of people that might want to get into games, being able to train themselves on Unreal, and then the pool of talent being wider, the pool of specialists being wider. All these different things, the ability to call in a specialist from Epic themselves to answer questions or help with things, because Epic makes themselves available to these big companies to help with development. Like, there's a lot of ways that this is going to make things better. I think this is all. I think everything that they're saying, even though a lot of it's just speaking for the sake of speaking because they needed to fill a 6-minute video to hype this up.
That's every dev. Everyone does that. Especially ones with big corporate overlords who just like
big corporate overlords that are under a lot of pressure to deliver games.
They're investor.
They're under a lot of pressure to deliver, and the last Halo, while well liked in like some regards, had a lot of flaws. Like they had to deliver a lot, especially in this current landscape. I think that everything that they said, everything that they tried to communicate without sharing too much, because if you overshare, that's also an issue. I think that they did a good job of being like, hey, this is where we're going. This is our current plan that we can share with you. And these are the steps we're taking to make this more attainable. I think it was a really good decision and a good announcement overall, because this does, for both casual fans who are just like, oh, that sounds really good, to the people like us who are a little more informed, being like, oh, that makes a lot of sense from the development and like the scale side. I think it was overall a win.
I think them trying to go for multiple games too, and sort of pursuing whatever projects it does feel a little like pseudo Valve like, where it's like people are going to go work on whatever they want to work, as opposed to a big problem with
going to Halo Studios. In my head means 343 was the entire studio. Now there is going to be Team A, Team B, Team C working on. There's more like Team A, Team B, and then Team A is going to be the big team working on whatever the main thing is and working on communication within each other. And then Team B is going to be the kind of like idea group that is like testing a bunch of stuff, coming up with ideas, thinking like Valve is in a unique situation because of how they function. But that is how a lot of studios work, is that you have, and I eventually I'll release this as part of part of the podcast when we don't have a guest on or we need to fill time or something, Scott. I have an interview with the studio head of the team behind Supervive, the new.
Very cool. Yeah.
So that I never got to write as an article, that I want to release is just like audio at some point, because it was recorded with the audio we're using now. But he talked a lot about like how every month they have or every couple months they have a open season, like, hey, come up with an idea and maybe we'll implement it in the game. Like the basically internal dev jam. Like those kind of things are very common at some of these developers, and I think what you're talking about of like it gives you Valve vibes is true, even if the ideas don't come to fruition, because the way you said that and the way they said this is not like, oh, we're going to be working on multiple things. It's that we have multiple ideas and we're going to pick one and then work really hard on that to deliver it. But to both that point and to what I was saying earlier, what if they like an idea and then they are like, oh, what if we did this in like, not necessarily a Halo Wars, but like, what if we had a Halo visual novel? Or what if we had a Halo
dating sim?
Or like a Halo roguelite or something.
Yeah.
Like,
roguelite. I feel like that's like every
game.
Roguelite is so broad that you can
roguelite rogue elements, rogue whatever elements are the new RPG systems. Because back in like the PS3 era, every game was like, oh yeah, we're adding RPG systems to our game, and I can't remember the term that everybody used, but it's like that's what roguelite is now. But that gives them the opportunity to be like, we like this idea, let's find a team to make it. Let's hire an indie team. Let's hire a smaller dev to either assist or make it or whatever, and let's get it out and make it another Halo thing. Because Microsoft doesn't necessarily care if Halo Studios is making it if it's not a main thing. They just want to deliver more games, deliver more product. So they have the benefit of having other studios internally at Microsoft that could potentially, if they're not working on something, or if they have a game done and they're just working on support for it or DLC for it, come in and help, come make a new thing. Something like that. Who knows? But yeah. So Xavier, do you have any thoughts on anything we just said? I know you've been kind of.
Listen, I mean, you got like I don't know, like I wish you guys are worse people. Because I feel like if you guys had like if you guys just didn't like say the shit, I'd be able to push back. But I mean, everything like I just agree. So if you guys could be a little more unreasonable.
I wish your opinions were worse. Is a
honestly,
it's
yes,
very funny. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's popular. All these fucking debate podcasts where people just like inviting people with shitty opinions on.
If you just had a little bit more Nick Wright in you, you could,
Okay,
I would
no,
have
thank
back.
you.
Well, I would like a
my-
Halo Crusader Kings. That's my Halo like legacy like 4X game. I think that shit would be fire.
Here,
So I don't know, like
with
Halo
with like a covenant hierarchy, and then there's like
yeah.
Oh,
I think that'd be sick.
Okay, Halo Studios, he's cooking a little.
Look, okay, Scott. So before we end, I'll throw that out there then. What if this doesn't work? Let's have a little bit of a debate here. What? Because I'm skeptical about most things Microsoft business related. Like
True.
I don't after everything that they've done the last 2 years, after all the miscommunication, after all the studio closures, after all the essentially like just straight up lies that they said when they finalized the Blizzard acquisition. After all that, I no longer have faith in Game Pass. I no longer have faith in Microsoft Game Studio. I no longer have faith in any of these messages that even the teams are saying, because I have a feeling that they're all Microsoft coded with how they're trying to communicate. I feel the corporate fingers in all of these things now, having to basically try and fix things by saying all the right things because they've done so much wrong over the course of these massive layoffs and the studio closures and stuff. What if let's talk what is the worst case scenario here? What does this not the Unreal stuff, because there's no way that part goes wrong. That's just a smart move, like that smart business move from a studio that was using from all intents and purposes, from what they're saying, an outdated engine that they were already struggling to upkeep.
An outdated engine that took more time managing.
Yeah.
That took away from time developing.
Yeah.
And then
all the training and stuff. Yeah. Everything. Yeah.
Yes.
How does this go wrong? How does this new future for Halo devolve if it isn't everything we just said, where they try and because in my head the worst case scenario is that whatever the next Halo game, if they don't port Infinite to Unreal 5 and they don't release more content for Infinite in terms of like, I know they're going to support it like multiplayer wise for at least another 2-3 years. Even when the new Halo game is on the horizon, they'll still support Infinite multiplayer because they know they have to wait until the full transition happens before that has to go away. In my head, that would be another 6-year development cycle. Game launches with similar issues to Infinite, where it's just this giant open thing that doesn't have what people want from a Halo story. It doesn't provide this like tight narrative, or not necessarily tight, but engaging narrative that makes you want to go in. And so it turns out to be this lopsided thing again, where the multiplayer is still great, but the single player continues to just be this essentially relic.
What was the original question?
It was, what do you think is the worst case scenario? Because that is my worst case scenario, is that it's lopsided again, where it takes another 6 years to come out. It takes, the multiplayer is still solid to great, just like Infinite, but the single player experience is still a relic of them trying to chase things that are that don't mean anything to Halo and aren't. It's going to be like Concord, where it's like it launches in a time period where that is no longer the thing.
Hey, so I'll preface this by saying I am cautiously optimistic. Part of me has to be optimistic because I feel like if I'm pessimistic, I would just sort of collapse like a dying star and just be miserable, and I can't allow that to happen. Otherwise, I can't get any work done. However, I feel a few things. One, I feel like Xbox at the end of the day is still held up by Microsoft, one of the most profitable, revenue-generating tech companies in the entire world. And I feel like even if Xbox does poorly, Microsoft is not going to let Xbox die. And so a big part of that is Halo and Master Chief being some of the most iconic, not some of the most iconic Xbox brand, Xbox IP, Xbox character in this this gaming company's history. I also am optimistic that because I think a good, well supported, critically acclaimed Halo game, if it were to release, would do very well, and people
This
will
guy's
come.
out here
People will
working around the
still.
issues, Xavier. He's not talking. He's not spitting. He's not shooting the fire. He's just talking.
I'm at the.
Stop being.
He's a
Stop.
shooter,
This is my VP debate.
Shoot your fire. Nah, shoot your fire. We're gonna have a debate episode where we just bring topics that we know are gonna infuriate the other person. But right now, I want to just like I get what you're saying there. But like, what do you think the worst case is?
Worst case scenario. It's so hard for my brain to think about because I hate thinking about worst case.
Okay, well think on your worst case, and I'll throw out what I think is actually going to happen if things go the right way. Because the right way would be whatever the next gen Xbox is in like 3-4ish years launches with the new Halo.
Yeah,
and it is.
I think that'll happen.
Feature complete.
I think that happens.
Everything is good. Everything is to the point where it is considered good, whether it gets like 7s to 10s, somewhere in that range, and it is considered a success. And they are going to continue from that point as the new starting point for more frequent releases, better updates, more DLC, maybe even story DLC or packs or something that adds to the experience. I think it's going to be what people think we're getting with the Switch 2, where everybody thinks the Switch 2 is going to launch with the next 3D Mario since it's been a while. I think they're aiming for that, where they launch the next Xbox, which is going to be the first Xbox since the 360 to launch with like the blockbuster title that will sell the system. I think that is what this is messaging. I think that is what Microsoft internally is aiming for in 4 years, whenever the next console generation begins.
I guess the worst case scenario would be that they miss that window. I don't think it'll happen.
If they miss another console launch window, I think that means the box is officially like a secondary thought, or a third thought. It's already second thought. Their first thought is sell Game Pass, sell software, because they were already in that mode this generation, because they already embraced the PC element, and now they're even embracing the publishing on other platforms. Stuff is going to start coming to Switch 2 when it happens, if it's feasible. Stuff is already coming to PlayStation on delay or whatever.
So I guess that's my worst case then. For worst case for Xbox is that the next console comes out and there is not a AAA bona fide ready to go Halo game that is launching with it. Because it's also, because not only is it like, is it missing another generation of consoles without if you're launching a new console and you're not attaching your star, this is your big, let's say they're a film studio, this is your big movie project, you're not putting your star on it again.
Yep.
We have to question what you value at this point.
I already questioned Microsoft enough.
I mean, yeah, well, of course we're questioning Microsoft.
Xavier, what's your fire take? Throw out something that's
Microsoft completely closes down now. I don't know, like just the next game is ass.
Happen.
The next game is ass, and then they have to, I feel like you can, I feel like you can only do like the athlete that's not an all-star anymore, like, I'm getting back to my roots. I brought back my old coach, we're taking it back to basics, and then like you come out and you're like still ass. So I feel like
the worst case scenario is Halo becomes Ben Simmons.
Yeah, it becomes Ben Simmons. We get
no.
This video is the off-season Ben Simmons video where he's like looking buff.
No, I won't take that back. We are not off-season glazing Ben Simmons podcast. We are the
no.
This is the video. No, opposite. The opposite. This is Xavier saying this Halo video just came out. This is the off-season Ben Simmons video where everyone's like, "Oh, Ben Simmons back in the gym."
So we're in great form now, and then in 3 months we're gonna
We're gonna be
gross.
Like, where is it, Ben?
We really are the Bruno Caboclo of podcasts. Gross.
We're 2 years away from being 2 years.
That quote he had where he was like, a lot of people forgot how good at basketball I am. It's like, I bet a lot of people have forgotten.
As long as we're not Dorian Finney-Smith glazing Ben Simmons, as long as we're not that comment that came out like a week ago where he's like, bro, we're gonna be real scary with Ben, people forgot how good Ben is, and I'm like, Dorian, you're not gonna be on that team in 3 months.
I'll never forgive these fucking people trying to compare Ben Simmons to Draymond Green. I will never forgive that.
Look,
one of the best defenders in NBA history. This is crazy.
Look, we are in unstable territory with Halo, but at least there's a good Dragon Ball.
We
game
hope
coming out.
we hope they're more like they're not Ben Simmons and they're more like I don't know, like what, like Jonathan Isaac had a good return from injury. Klay Thompson is, we hope they're like
no. We want what Microsoft wants and what this announcement is trying to be is that they're going to be what's his face, the Cooper Flag coming in next year, like with all the stuff, like all the hype, like they want this next Halo to be like generational. Like they want KG to be talking up. They want KG to be talking up this next Halo is the next scary white guy coming into the league that he's been. We that's what.
Also, I feel like this
want.
next Halo is gonna just be titled Halo. I feel like they're gonna do the reboot thing.
I feel like what Halo Studios is doing. Yeah. Oh no, they shouldn't do that. I really hope they don't.
They might not reboot like the whole like anything, but like the game will just be called like Halo.
For me, this feels like Halo Studios kind of like oh we're gonna take some time to see what we got with this Foundry project. We're gonna fully explore all the different options. We're gonna pursuing different projects. We're gonna see which ones which sticks. What we really think. This feels like the Thunder. They've got all the assets. They've got all different guys. Like this could be a franchise guy. This could be a franchise guy. This could be a franchise guy.
The issue is if they were the Thunder, they'd already have an SGA. At best, they're like they're like the Jazz. They have like the Lauri Markkanen, which was infinite. Who's like good, had potential, had the really good launch, and they have all the assets in the assets in the tank.
Launch your Lauri Markkanen on the.
They had like
Jazz
year 6. They had like year 5, year 6 Lauri Markkanen, where it's like, oh yeah, he did like all-star year. Lauri Markkanen is the equivalent to what Infinite was, where it had like a really good launch. It has really good features, really good online, but it's not like the complete thing. Because not everything's there. It had like clear shortcomings, and he's not like it's not like really there yet. Yeah. And then they have nothing else.
And then now we're seeing as they're getting prepped for the new season, and they're showing us like Lauri in the gym. It's the equivalent of Halo just the other day being like, all right, we've added third person mode, and it's like that's not what we want.
And that's the first time we mentioned that too. Yeah, third person mode finally is coming to that.
And it's like cool. Not who wanted this.
Cool. Yeah, sure. The third person mode like the John Collins or the Walker Kessler. Like we're sitting here like that's what they are. They have all the assets for the future, but we don't know what any of those assets are going to turn out to be or how good they are. Like this is a lot of like they have the one piece and now they're like looking for everything else. They're not the Thunder. The Thunder have like 3 bona fide pieces.
I think everything around it. I think we found our source for shorts content, and it's going to be our
basketball comparisons.
Our Halo basketball comparisons.
We should totally do an entire like bit where it's like us talking about basketball. Like it's like what game studio is or what publisher is this basketball team? Yeah, we can do that. We can make that a bit.
Ernie, let me tell you, 343 stink. I'm so sick.
Oh, I don't. God, gotta find our inner Charles Barkley to talk about this. Yeah, I think we've officially reached the tail end of what our brains can handle discussing this. But yeah, moral of the story, everything that this Halo Studios rebrand and all they're talking about sounds good, sounds reasonable, sounds like smart decisions. Hopefully they don't turn into Ben Simmons. That's what we don't want.
It's like the Kawhi Paul George Clippers. It's like, oh, great on paper. Oh, this sounds great. Oh,
and then it never happens. Derails like, because people leave. Yeah, people leave or because they run into issues and all. Yeah, I can see that.
We don't. All we want is we don't want.
Microsoft, don't be Doc Rivers. That's all we ask.
It's funny telling Microsoft not to be the Clippers when Steve Ballmer is the owner of the Clippers.
Yeah. Hey, he's ex-Microsoft. It doesn't count anymore.
Don't go back. Don't go back.
Don't go back. Stay in Inglewood. Stay in your new arena. Stay in your new arena. You got to worry about selling tickets. Yeah, you gotta focus on selling tickets with Kawhi probably playing 30 games or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, he was healthy last. I mean, his knee's fucked though. So
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how. We will be eagerly awaiting the future of Halo and whatever the Clippers look like this season. I'm sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to one of those things.
I'm looking forward to seeing
I'm ready
the
for
Sparking
Harden and some
Zero.
bum.
I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in the comments talk about their favorite Sparking Zero character and how excited they are for the game and how much they're loving it, depending on when they listen to this. Thank you for sticking around. If you stuck around for too long of us talking about everything that we talked about today, because we added an entire 40-minute segment about sports that we didn't at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end. Thanks for listening. As always, if you want to read the God, I can't even think right now. The full review of Sparking Zero, there will be a over on Booster Blogs. There will be a full written review that I'm going to finish. It's going to have more detail about like the mechanics and stuff that we didn't touch on here. So go read that. If you want to watch more content, we got podcasts every week. We're going to have other stuff coming out soon. Obviously, we stream twice a week too over on Twitch. So check us out over there. Links are all in the description. Leave a comment how excited you are for Sparking Zero, your favorite character, your favorite exclusion if you're pissed like me about Dragon Ball exclusion. Maybe just your favorite Dragon Ball game if you want to talk about another different Dragon Ball game. There's a lot of those. There's like 50 of those. Have fun. If it's the Wonder Swan version, you're wrong. We don't talk about that one. But we'll talk to you next week or later this week. I don't know, Scott. We haven't figured out a schedule for this podcast yet. We'll see if we can get someone to come and talk another fun topic on. If not, then you'll see us next Monday. Until then, have a good one. Enjoy yourself, and stay tuned for more content.